All right, I think we're live. Yep, we got action. Okay. Welcome everyone if you're tuning in. This is going out live, but if you're watching it afterwards, this period of time, about half an hour before the live stream officially starts, is what we call pre-game. Essentially, it's just shooting the breeze, asking questions that are perhaps not related to the stream subject. Anything you're wondering about, anything that you've seen recently that I've been doing, anything on the website, any questions you had, even if you just want to catch up. Come and talk, ask me any questions you like. So you can come along to pre-game on any of these live streams. I like to start 15 to 30 minutes before, just lets everyone sort of relax a little bit and, get some conversation going. Anyone that's usually asking questions, because these live streams are predominantly a question and answer format. I do have a very, defined structure of what I'm going to talk about, but you can chime in at any point during the live chat. And leading up to it as well on Facebook, YouTube as well here. You can put questions, post questions to me, email me questions, and I will include it in the live stream, give you a mention. You can stay anonymous if you like, so on and so forth. That's what this period of time is for. I'm just going to put up some last minute Facebook posts while we're going, and just to get people. Just to remind people, just in case they missed the last couple of posts I put up today, just reminding people, and that way if they've only just got home, they can jump on if they've forgotten. So just quickly here, I'm sorry, it's cold and I cough a little bit. It is getting better, but I do have a puffer this time. Probably quitting cigarettes would be, the best idea. But look, you can't have everything. Okay. Now, am I able to? No, it doesn't matter. I can do something else. I was just about to say, if you're right in the chat, just yell out so you hear, but I can't hear text. It's been a long day, to be entirely fair. A very good day, though. I hope everyone's having a great. What month are we in? May. God, it's May. Okay. But things have started to pick up recently, which I'm happy about, across the board in the aquarium industry, which is fantastic. And it's also fantastic to hear that a lot of aquaculture species are, gaining some strength in the price arena and actually coming up in price per kilo. So that's also bloody fantastic. Please buy aquaculture fish where you can. Prawns, barramundi, any barramundi that you see in Woolworths is, I believe, going to come out of mostly Humpty Doo Barramundi, the biggest barramundi farm in Australia. The Richards family up there are absolutely fantastic. So, it's a family-owned business. No money, it's not foreign-owned company or anything like that, and they're just great up there. So, and beautiful barramundi as well, absolutely beautiful, and saltwater barramundi, I might add. And look, if you've bought prawns from Woolworths or Coles or somewhere like there, and it says product of Australia, it will nearly 95%, I will guarantee, be aquacultured prawns. Now, if you haven't made that connection before and you've been happy to eat prawns and you think they're tasty, and that's because they are and they're beautiful, Australian prawn farmers are in a league of their own in regards to, not only in regards to broodstock and hatchery and things like that, and technology and domestication of broodstock and things, but also in the grow out scene and producing a top quality product. So if you're just like, oh, I don't like aquaculture stuff, but you've been eating prawns from Woolworths and Coles, product of Australia, it's an aquaculture prawn, mostly monodon, black tiger prawns. But banana prawns do come through at certain times of the year. There are a few farms doing banana prawns, but the majority of prawns in Australia are monodon or black tigers. So, yes, a little bit of knowledge there for you. You're late. No, you're not late. You're late for the start of pre-game. Yes, you definitely are. Welcome. And who am I speaking to? I can't quite see the profile picture, and I don't want to click on anything in case I screw up the live stream, which is entirely possible. If it's not broken, don't fix it, you know. So that's done. We have some comments on Facebook that I will just go and have a look. Oh, okay. Now, special mention to the guys at Gallery Aquatica. Anya on the live stream of Australian Aquarist, and all the guys in the shop, B, Cam, Anya, the rest of the staff there, have really been getting into my I've really they've really taken it on board. They've really ran with it, and it's giving them some fantastic results. And look, there's some great things happening on their comments at the moment. If there's anyone on those comments on Gallery Aquatica that wants to come along and ask questions, by all means, please. Anya's actually put a link up there. Not that if you're reading the, I don't know why I'm mentioning this. I'm waffling. So all I want to say is loving the guys at Gallery Aquatica. They've now got Microplex on the shelf there too. And thank you very much, Gallery Aquatica, also for supporting me with other stuff such as spin touch discs and all those other things. So thank you very much, Gallery Aquatica. I really appreciate it. You guys do fantastic work. If you're in the area, drop by their new store, which also has which is combined freshwater and saltwater. The two stores are now one mega store. They've got an aquascaping area. They've got an upstairs area, a downstairs area. They've got new coral tanks in there. They've got new systems. They've got they're increasing their stock level. You can imagine compressing two stores into one and moving them all around in that process, and then having to then restock all those tanks. Does take a little bit of time, and when you're moving not one shop is bad enough to move live fish with, but when you're moving two shops with livestock, that's a challenge. So obviously in the stores, they minimize the amount of livestock they have to move, so they minimize their risk in the move. So apart from the dry goods, which it's stocked to the hilt, obviously. It's just taking a little bit of time for them to get their livestock back up, but they're moving ahead in leaps and bounds. And drop by, have a look. They're great guys, knowledgeable, really knowledgeable. So yeah, you won't find a better store around the area for friendliness and knowledge and peace of mind. And I know for a fact that if you bring Anya coffee, she will give you crisp high fives. So yeah. Hey Jason, how you going? Oh, no worries at all, man. You're very welcome. Question, Jason, have you noticed an improvement in clarity by using the Cataplex? Maybe 12 hours after, a day after, something like that. Hello, Anya. How are you? I just gave you a plug. I don't know if you heard. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for posting up that just before the stream. Oh my God. Thank you so much. Fantastic. Love it. I am going to get off Facebook because it is distracting me and it's too late now. And if you're not coming to the stream yet, then, well, we've done all we can. Tad late. I mean, we're not starting until 7. I'm pre-gaming. This is pre-game. So yeah, you're early compared to everyone else. Much early. So, Anya or Jason, did you have, while we have more people arriving, did you have any questions on anything in regards to anything water, anything in regards to my products, any questions you might have on food, water quality, problems that you might be experiencing with customers, anything like that? This is what this time's for. If you have questions about UVs for your store, UVs for your customer, how to size a UV, if you've got no idea about ozone, I can do a quick 5-minute spiel, or we can just carry on with general bullshittery, really. They're all valid options. What is going on? Oh, I've got packing under my desk. Okay. All right. So, guys, tell us about the UVs. Okay, right. Well, I was going to tell you that, but about the UVs. Okay, so I will be giving you a little bit of a demo later on of a program that I have built for sizing UV sterilizers. I'm pretty stoked with how it turned out. And this allows me to size any UV in any diameter, any length, any amount of bulbs, any coordinate positioning of bulbs within the housing, flow rate, UV transmittance percentage, whether it's stainless steel, white plastic, or black plastic. Yes, it makes a difference, and I'll show you why. So that's I recently sized up and am in the final stage of the quoting process for the first of the UVionic commercial range UVs, which is a 5 bulb. So each bulb is 320 watts for a total of 1600 watts. A 5 bulb UV, 300 millimeters in diameter, 1800 millimeters long. It's got a centralized control box with individual indicators for the lamps, etc. On a stand, mounted, everything like that. That's going on to a broodstock system in an aquaculture facility. So that has allowed me to size those UVs, which also then opens up the possibility to, if you guys have any other brand of UV, a brand of UV that doesn't have a label, anything like that, as long as we've got the wattage of the bulb and the power supply, right? And the dimensions of the UV, I can tell you what the output of that is going to be, so that you can then use that on your system. If you're wondering, if you've got, say, a UV clarifier, that you don't know what the UV dose is, but you've got a really small tank, you've got this 25 watt UV clarifier, you don't know whether it's going to do the job. Let's run the numbers. I can do it for you. It's now part of the service that we offer, is full, not only UV supply, but now UV engineering as well. So that means stand-up UVs for your stores, anything like that. And the sky's the limit, essentially. That's a continuation on from the UVionic single chamber UVs and single bulb UVs that go up to, well, it goes up to 155, and then the 240 and the 310 watt are 2 120s and 2 155 watts respectively. Yeah, it's a continuation on from there, the design work that I did from there, and I did it all on like paper, and then confirmed it with other industry calculations and third-party validation, and that allowed me to then go on and build my own calculator and things like that. So it's got a lot more accurate for the industry as well, I believe, with this calculator. So I'll demonstrate that later on. UVs are about UV shipments about to land of the UVionic single lamp UVs. If you're looking at upgrading your store or putting UVs into your store, I can offer store discounts over and above the base discount, which you also get to resell these. I can drop ship them. You can advertise them on your website. If you do service and maintenance work, which I have quite a few people doing service and maintenance work and installs now that use my UVs. as well as the shipment that was delivered about 4 or 5 weeks ago now, maybe a bit longer. That was 35 87 watt UVs for a store upgrade, a store in Australia, an upgrade. So that's running all of their systems now. There's running 1 UV on 35 different systems crossing saltwater and freshwater. Oh, Machu, hello. How are you? Good day? I had a good day. Jason, definitely noticeable difference in clarity in the following day. Okay, right. This is feedback that I'm getting from everyone and something that I've noticed as well. The cataplex, which Jason is talking about at the moment, which he won on the last live stream. This is the cataplex. So this is a product I've been wanting to make for about 15 years. And it's evolved since then, since the evolution of microbe market and all my probiotics and everything like that. So this is not heated. It's Indian almond leaf, so catapa leaves, Indian almond leaf. I micronize it and grind it to a micron fine powder. But there are still some pieces of larger sort of leaf in there that you can see sort of floating down. These are 100% Australian, not imported, Australian Indian almond leaves. So this is it's then ground up, put into a fermenter, a bioreactor. Strains of bacteria added for the anaerobic phase. That is then filled up with RO water and a various amount of different supplements that fuel the digestion and the fermentation stage. Aerobic stage comes first, then the aerobic stage. So there's a certain lot of microbes that go into the aerobic stage, and then they then switch because they're facultative, so they will do aerobically and anaerobically, and they change their food source and their metabolic byproducts when they switch. And then I have some primarily anaerobic strains which go in there, which further break down the lignin and the cellulose and everything like that. So not only are you getting the native microbes coming through from the Indian almond leaf, because it's not imported, it's not treated, it's not fumigated, it's not gamma irradiated, nothing like that. And they're fresh, as fresh as they can be, because it's only last season that they were collected, or even earlier, or even later, early this season. And then they are fermented anaerobically, and then it is left to mature, and then it's bottled. And it's not just the extract that's bottled, it's every different other part of the solution, the sludge and everything in the bottom you get as well. So then when you dose it, you get the extract to go straight into your water to have an immediate effect. There's no waiting for the leaf to release it. You get particles of leaf in there that then flocculate the matter within the aquarium, because it's now loaded and pre-seeded with probiotics that have, one, done the extraction for you already, and secondly, then go into seeding your aquarium with beneficial microbes, which are strains from microbe market, obviously. And then the because when you have biofilms forming on different particles, they become sticky, right? So then, and you got live microorganisms going into your tank, which helps to break it down, and it just grabs a hold of everything and produces a process called microflocculation, which is essentially taking small stuff and making it bigger so it sinks. And then, because it's going straight into the particles are going straight into your substrate after they've gone through and settled on everything that's already, and they're already again pre-cultured with microbes and probiotics and beneficial bacteria. And then that then goes into your substrate already seeded, and it's grabbed a hold of stuff that's going to sink to your substrate for your plants and stuff to use. And it's already seeded, so it's instant biofilm. And it then goes into your substrate to continue cleaning up any other waste and degrading any solid waste and other undigested foods and broken down plant matter and things like that. So it's like 3 or 4 products in one: a flocculant, a black water extract, a probiotic addition, and a water conditioner and softener. So yeah, Cataplex. All the information is on the back of the label. You obviously are not going to be able to read it there, but you can read the back of the label on the website. So you can find all the information there. Go ahead and have a look. If you've got any questions, let me know. And it smells amazing. It just smells like, what can I describe it smells like? Like a really strong cold tea, or really nice smelling leaf litter that's in the process of the last stage of broken down. So it's like really humic and dark and things like that. That's the kind of smell it is. It's a really pleasant smell. So yeah, that's how Cataplex works as a natural flocculant. So yeah, there you go. There's the information for you. It is a natural product, so and it is, dosed to your liking depending on how dark you want the tank. Obviously, you need to watch your pH and KH, but if you muck them with black water, you know what that is. It's 1 mil per 10 liters down to 1 mil per 2 liters. I've actually dosed it like 4 to 6 times that dose rate with no problem at all. Like my dosing is kind of like undo the cap and pour it in, but that's only because I tested it for 6 or 8 months or something like that in all of my systems here and all of my tanks here and ponds and things like that, and then really took it to the limit. And yeah, so that's Cataplex for you. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on, because I've got because that's going to come up in the conversation about probiotics. With the other products. If you haven't gone and had a look yet, you can go and have a bit of a squeeze while we're talking. I am going to do some screen sharing along the way so that you've got a visual reference for the words and strains and other stuff that I'll be talking about. So you've got a visual reference on the website. The website I'm trying to make as detailed as possible in an easy to understand format, to give you information on why the probiotics work and how they work. So if you go to, for instance, if you go to the PMX8 page, which we'll look on later on, you'll see that I've broken down every mechanism, the organisms that are confirmed to be outcompeted or eliminated or reduced by the application of probiotics, and the individual strain, with the mechanisms that they use to do that and how they do that, and then how they interact with each other, because a lot of these strains have very synergistic relationships, and you can improve their performance out of sight by including them together in the dosing rather than just one or the other. Archaea do the same thing. Archaea, they actually act more like a living enzyme, and they actually feed waste to your nitrifiers and to your heterotrophs, so that their metabolism is actually amplified. So the same amount of bacteria can do X amount times more with, not as much energy, because the archaea are actually symbiotically helping them to pre-digest their food and feeding them enzymes and, improving the environment through CO2 stripping and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, it's a very involved sort of complex symbiotic relationship, biofilms, which is exactly what we're going to talk about tonight. So yeah. Who's got their drinks ready? Did everyone remember to put their beers in the fridge? Obviously I'm just drinking water, but there's no reason why you guys can't enjoy. While we're about 5 minutes away, and to be honest, it'll be a couple of minutes after that anyway. Couple of other things that I was going to talk about. I'm going to talk about my skimmers, the SKMs, and with the order for those is just about to land. I was going to have quite a few more models than I thought, but I've sold them all, so I will just have at this point only one left in stock. And I'll show you the lids and the lid design that I've got, and the spray nozzle and washdown design with some of the washdown mechanisms and automatic timers, just so you can see what the difference is. It's always good to have a visual aid and, you know, see stuff up close, because, you know, whenever you're going to have a lid off a skimmer off someone else's facility, to have a look at the washdown system only if they're doing maintenance on it, right? Otherwise, it's up in the air and you can't get a good look at it. So yeah, I'll show you that. Yeah. Other than that, we're going to talk about all the different sorts of probiotics that I've got currently. So that is NComp, Microplex, Sub-6, and PMX, the new PMX8, the new pathogen mitigation mix, which I'm very excited about. People have started buying with great gusto. There's been, because it's coming into winter, a lot of the pond guys are going to start experiencing a lot of stress factors with their fish through the environment. Cold water, colder air, it holds more oxygen, but, you know, then their phytoplankton blooms get less dense because they're not, it's not as warm, so the algae isn't growing as fast. It has, you know, a fair few flow-on effects, and some of those stresses do end up with the fish getting stressed and contracting bacterial infections and some parasitic infections and things like that. So I've got 2 or 3 people at the moment actually applying the PMX8 to see what their pathogen mitigation is like in their ponds with that product. So yeah, one of those customers is using the Sub-6 very, very effectively. They dosed it last week, and this week it is the greenest pond out of their entire farm. Well, I mean, you know, it's significantly darker than the rest of their blooms, significantly darker, noticeably, which is exactly what the Sub-6 is supposed to do. So the Sub-6 and these newer ones, they're a plain package probiotic, guys, because, I mean, it tells you what it is. It tells you what it is on the back. It's not like the Microplex yet. You know, labeling and stuff releasing product and doing research and testing, it takes time. So, you know, bear with me. But this Sub-6, so it is designed, because in aquaculture ponds, not like an ornamental pond, so in aquaculture pond, for those of you guys who don't know, they use the phytoplankton bloom, so the algae bloom, the green water, to remediate the water. It is their filter, okay? And at the same time, it is their oxygenator during the day, because photosynthesis provides a massive amount of oxygen. So if they can get that pumping and get the photosynthesis going really hard in that pond, more oxygen for the fish and therefore faster growth, and more nutrient stripped because the algae is growing faster. So then you can feed more, which then also makes the fish grow faster. And it's a balance, right? What you don't want to do, obviously, because when we're trying to grow algae, we're trying to maintain nitrate and phosphate levels and nutrient levels. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to add probiotics that are going to eat away at that nitrate and phosphate. We want it to liberate that from any waste within the system. And in a pond environment, it's all lying on the bottom. So you've got to chew it up somehow. Otherwise, you've got to dig it out at the end of the year. So because all that waste is on the bottom and it's got huge amounts of nutrient in it, if we choose the right strains in Sub-6, which you'll see the strains in it if you go to the website, they are made to break down all of the solid waste on the bottom, so you don't have to clean your ponds out as much, if at all, and to liberate that waste into the water column in the form of nitrate and phosphate and other macro and micronutrients to feed the algae bloom, whilst not removing any of the nitrate and phosphate. It's also got some specific strains in there that remineralize stuff out of, you know, precipitated material, such as calcium carbonate precipitates phosphate. So, or phosphate binds to it. There's a strain in there that will liberate silicates and things like that from bound up mineralized zones to feed the phytoplankton bloom. So that's what it did, and it performed exactly the way it was supposed to perform, and that's only after a week. So I'm very much looking forward to the next couple of months and seeing what the feedback is from with that. But we'll talk more about that because it's very interesting in the way of biofilms, BOD, organic carbon, everything like that. Aquaculture guys don't add it. They don't, well, I lie. They sometimes add molasses, and it depends on the type of system they're running and how much bacteria they want to bloom versus how much phytoplankton they want to bloom. But generally speaking, in a pond environment with fish, because, you know, it's not as complicated as a prawn pond, you can use the endogenous or the native organic carbon within the substrate and bound up in the nutrients and waste in the bottom that hasn't yet broken down in place of sugar, vodka, vinegar, like VSV's organic carbon dosing, OCK, my microbial nutrient. That's an organic carbon supplement. But aquaculture farmers don't use it because there's enough in the substrate. Now, this goes for freshwater tanks. You don't really need to add organic carbon unless, of course, you are culturing the biofilter, and then it's beneficial. But after that, all of the organic carbon native within the tank is more than enough, usually, to fuel microbial degradation and removal of solid and dissolved waste in your aquatic system. The only reason that organic carbon is regularly added in things like reef systems is for people running ultra-low nutrient systems with organic carbon-driven nutrient reduction. And that results, and that requires more fuel, and then you've got to balance nitrate and phosphate levels, and it's a whole bit of chemistry that we are going to go into. But generally speaking, organic carbon, even these quote unquote, mild forms, or what's the other term they use? Slow release or long acting, it's still organic carbon, and there's more than enough within the system. And biofilms, you don't have to like fuel it so you get big fluffy production of, like, that's overgrowth. That's not healthy, thin, functioning biofilm, but we're going to go into that. So yes, who we got? We got 7 people in here, 3 in the chat. Who are the other people in here? Please feel free to say hello, ask any questions. We're going to start in about 5 minutes. Everyone else can still hear me okay? Everything's going good. I haven't received any messages saying that anything's wrong yet, so that's a good thing. Okay, so what we're going to cover tonight was in the live streams, but for anyone just joining, this live stream is all about microbes, biofilm, probiotics, how they work in the aquatic system, what all the terms are, how to judge and view and, discern and analyze what they're doing, find out how they do it, and the modes of and the mechanisms of action that they use to achieve that. So, organic carbon and BOD, this is what they feed on. Autotrophs, heterotrophs, they all are affected by it, feed on it, draw things from it, etc. That's where we're going to start because that's their food. Okay. Then we're going to go into how they work. I'm going to throw some very confusing and even confusing for me, and this is why I've written it all down, so I can not get it wrong, so I get it right, and not confuse you. So how they do it, why they do it, the terms they used. You could do a deep dive into white papers after this, and then you'll know a little bit. It'll light bulb you. It won't be French to you. How they eat it, what they eat, where they get oxygen from, what their energy sources are, oxygen as a limiting factor, organic carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus as a limiting factor, the assimilation of nitrogen and phosphorus versus the removal of nitrogen and phosphorus. So that is termed assimilatory removal versus dissimilatory removal. So we're going to go into that. we're going to look at some heroes of the probiotic world and what they do and why they're so good. And you'll see these things then all around the place. I'll give you a couple of mentions of what we're talking about there. Nitrate specific removing organisms and how they do it. Then we're going to talk about pathogen mitigation, predatory strains, metabolic byproducts that are produced that are directly antagonistic to them, biofilm formation, how they form them, why then that becomes a mechanism for competitive exclusion, which is the main mode of action for reduction of pathogens, that then goes along with all those antimicrobials and everything like that are produced. So we're going to go into that. So you can see, probiotics are not just for waste and nitrate and phosphate removal. They do everything. They get rid of solid waste. They clean up algae. They produce metabolic byproducts which help you combat disease and improve the immune system of your fish so they don't get sick, all sorts of stuff. It's not just nitrate and phosphate removal, and it's not just Yakult. Okay, so Yakult, thank you, Yakult, because they, popularized probiotic, and it's proven, and dietary probiotics are a big thing, obviously. And by the way, there it is. PMX8 can be used either in the water or in the food. You can dust the food with it and get the fish to eat it, so it works internally as well. You can do both and have a double approach, and it's organic. So, as long as you maintain aeration and you follow the instructions, you'll be sweet. No chemotherapeutics. We're going to talk about Anamox, anaerobic ammonia oxidation. We're going to talk about aerobic versus anaerobic nitrate removal, both aerobic and anaerobic assimilatory and dissimilatory, and how that relates to our products here, specifically the NComp. We're going to talk about competitive exclusion of nuisance algae and things like that, what we've sort of found with the NComp, and what my theory is on the mode of action for the combating and removal of dinos that Anya has found. Competitive exclusion we've been through. So dosing and maintenance, practical dosing, how much, what the concentration means, why does it matter, the frequency at which you should dose. Is it the same for all systems? No. What are the restrictions that you should watch for? Oxygen, pH, cloudy water, things like that. All of those sorts of things. Preventions and things that you can do, say, if you're worried about, cloudy water, not because of probiotic application, but just in general, that sort of thing. We're going to go into the Redfield ratio, why it applies to not only phytoplankton but bacteria, but also the Redfield ratio for bacteria. That's that Triton came up with, which consequently has, I don't know if this is widely known, but consequently across many different sources and tests thus since has been proved to be very accurate. So well done, Hassan. You're a champion. Love you, dude. And then we're going to go through why everything is microbes and why it matters. Why it's the thing you should focus on most, and why everything hinges on the health of your microbes, and why you need to consider yourself a bacteria farmer, not even a water keeper, let alone a fish keeper, because you keep the microbes happy and you supply what they need, and then you keep the water in good condition. The water keeps the fish, right? Because when you're feeding the fish, but who handles their waste? Who's the janitor? Who's picking up the rubbish? Who's driving the garbage truck? Who's coming to pump out the septic system? Who's installing the pipework for the sewage system? No one. It's all in the tank. The tank needs to biologically take care of it. A cow, for example, apart from increased food conversion, decreased emissions of methane, things like that, increased growth, increased nutrient utilization, decreased pathogens in the gut and things like that. Apart from applying probiotics in the feed for cattle, you may apply them to the ground for a different reason, and that's to, get the biology back into the ground. But a cow walks along, is eating grass, enjoying its day, doing what a cow does, and then takes a deuce out the back, and it just walks off. It's not affected by that. But your fish, they're swimming along all happy, and they're just, and they're doing their business and carrying on. They don't think about it twice, but the bacteria are the ones that have got to clean up after them. And they've got to do it faster than it can break down into harmful substances that are then going to negatively impact your water quality and your fish, either directly or indirectly. So, you're a bacteria farmer. And that's why everything's microbes, and that's what this stream is all about. So, to get started, because it's now 10 past 7. So, to get started, Master Your Microbes. This stream, as I just mentioned, is all about probiotics, microbes, nitrification, denitrification, nutrient removal, waste removal, how they do it, why they do it, how they achieve it, and what to look for, and how to gauge how well your probiotics are working. Okay. So the first section is their food, and their food is organic carbon, or a carbon source of some description. Probiotics or heterotrophic bacteria predominantly use organic carbon. So that's carbon that's been liberated from biological sources that is directly available to assimilate into cell structure. So that's things like vodka, vinegar, sugar, molasses, glucose, pick it, no pox, whatever. That's organic carbon. That produces BOD, which is biological oxygen demand. Biological oxygen demand isn't a thing that's floating around in the water. It's a reading from the result of everything that is floating around in the water that creates oxygen demand. So anything that needs oxygen to oxidize and break it down and remove it, assimilate it, get rid of it, whatever, detoxify it, turn it into nitrate, produces a biological oxygen demand on the system. So that is obviously the more BOD you have in your water, the more oxygen you need to have in that water to treat that biological oxygen demand of the water. Okay. If you don't have enough, you get an oxygen crash. But that is also an indication that you have a lot of waste in your system as well, because, for instance, if you increase oxygen and then all these things start breaking down, it's an indication that you have a nutrient sink in your system, and you need to do something drastically quick about it. Conversely, inorganic carbon is what is used by autotrophic bacteria, so nitrifiers, Nitrosomonas, Nitrobacter, Nitrospira, Nitrosoospira, Nitrococcus, Nitrosococcus, and all of the other nitros and coccuses and spiras and bacters and whatever in the nitrifying autotrophic family. They use this predominantly in the form of carbonates. A lot of people say carbon dioxide. Wrong. They need alkalinity. Alkalinity is consumed along with oxygen and their, food source, ammonia or nitrite, and then they produce the byproduct. That's why your pH and alkalinity goes down when nitrification occurs. That's why in a freshwater tank you need to replace carbonate hardness, KH, alkalinity, all the same thing, relatively. That's why you need to replace it in a freshwater tank, even though you don't have corals, because the bacteria are eating it. In a reef tank, you got the bacteria eating it from all the food you put in, plus you've got calcification and all of the rest of it. So, inorganic carbon versus organic carbon, the different bacteria you use different sources. It all creates BOD. Hello, Josh. How are you? Wow, you actually used my bacteria and you started a cycle Friday and it's already cycled and it's Wednesday. How quickly did you notice the ammonia dropping? That's an excellent question. I'm going to make a note to myself. I've made a note to myself to check the chat regularly on every page. When I finish a page, I'll check the chat, so I'm not going to miss your questions. Thank you very much for your feedback, Josh. I very much want to hear more about your experience as the night goes on. Please continue to let me know about that. So the BOD is essentially everything that requires oxygen to break it down. The more often you add probiotics and the better your water quality is, the less waste will build up, and therefore the less BOD over time in general is going to be in your tank on a regular basis, because the idea is to have no waste in your tank. And we don't have to pay bacteria to do it. Once we dose them, they just eat it as long as it's there. You don't have to pay them. They're happy to literally eat shit, and they're fine with it. So why not? Then you don't have to gravel siphon, which I'll get into later. Or it reduces your gravel siphoning and your waste buildup anyway. It cleans up your rocks and your gravel and everything. So when we're talking about organic waste that contributes to BOD, that's uneaten food, it's fish feces, it's urine, nitrogen that's released from the gills, dead algae, dead plant matter that's fallen in and starting dead fish, slime coat that is stripped off, any metabolite at all that has solids or whatever is going to break down and end up in the tank. Okay. Eventually, that's going to end in the substrate. And unless when you're doing your water change, you're vacuuming the substrate and getting all of it, you're not going to get all that waste, which I love gravel vacuuming. I don't know why more people don't enjoy it, but I guess I'm just weird. So, generally speaking, your nutrient cycle, unless you're cycling your tank with ammonia artificially, generally speaking, the ammonia is going to come from the waste that's broken down by the heterotrophic bacteria. Now, the heterotrophic bacteria are your waste assimilators. They're your denitrifiers. They do nitrify as well. They do take and remove ammonia and nitrite, but just not as effectively as autotrophs, but they still do it. The trade-off is that autotrophs take longer to colonize, but once you're there, you're there. They break down nitrate, phosphate. They competitively exclude disease. They produce metabolites that attack disease-causing and gram-negative bacteria. There's some even predatory bacteria that we're going to talk about later, that is in the PMX8 as well. So, yeah, absolutely, absolutely, it starts with solid waste. And from that solid waste, through the breakdown of that solid waste, you're going to release more organic carbon, which will feed the bacteria that are growing and eating it. But then that organic carbon that you are liberating then temporarily increases the biological oxygen demand of your system. So you can see how all of this is a big balancing game. Oh, no, I'm referring to any freshwater tank with KH, because alkalinity, buffering capacity, and everything is what determines your pH. And unless you run an incredibly acidic tank with fish that are used to no KH and very acidic water, which it's incredibly hard to maintain biological filtration in that circumstance, I might add, you should be maintaining KH across the board. If you've got a fish in water, you need to be maintaining KH. So, because KH determines pH, whether it's 10 parts per million or 100 parts per million, it is the thing that fuels your nitrification and stabilizes your pH. The lower your KH and the lower the pH, the more often you need to check it, because the less of a buffer zone you've got there before it drops below dangerous levels. Yes, and no, but that's to do with biological filtration there, Josh. So if you're cycling your aquarium, you 100% definitely need to monitor your KH and pH and supplement it if you require. The beauty of Encomp is it aerobically denitrifies and adds alkalinity back to the system through denitrification, because it liberates some of that alkalinity back and adds it back to the water. So as your denitrification cycle within the Encomp starts, you're going to notice that your KH won't drop as fast, because it will be giving back some of the carbonate hardness that it took when it oxidized the ammonia and the nitrite in the nitrification cycle earlier on. GC Reefer, your NComp is arriving tomorrow. Excited to try it with your dinos. Please let me know how you go. I was looking at Gallery Aquatic's post, and there was a guy there saying that it wasn't working with his dinos yet. I'm not sure exactly what the circumstance was there, whether it was a new tank that's still cycling. If so, nutrient level is going to be high, and the time it takes to get rid of that ugly phase in those dinos and stuff is going to be increased, because it's also got to take care of ammonia, nitrite, nitrate, all other manner of BOD and everything like that floating around in the water. The reason it might have been, if it is cycling, if the tank is cycling, the reason that customer may not have had luck with dinos yet, and why Anya and other people are having luck with it, is because they're using it in mature systems where the nutrient levels are already low, the biological filtration is already established, the microbial herd and the microbial community is already established, and it's just, returning that balance as well as sopping up any residual nutrient in the water. So it does it quicker than, say, a system that it's also got to take care of ammonia and nitrite from a cycle, or a dirty tank, or a tank that's been overhauled that's got a lot of waste in it, or anything like that, that sort of thing. Again, biological oxygen demand, the more shit that's in there, the harder it has to work. And obviously, as it's breaking other nutrient down, if it's in a really bad phase of tank, reconditioning or tank startup or something, that extra nutrient from the nitrification cycle and breaking down all that is then going to feed that nutrient into the dinos as well. So you sort of got to get rid of that before you can outcompete them completely. That's the same with any organism that you're trying to outcompete with probiotics. Tank is 8 to 9 months old. Okay, so that could be, is it relatively immature, or is it loaded with coral? By all means, please send me an email. I'm happy to go through it with you, or please keep interacting, and I'm quite happy to answer your questions through. It'll just be a bit segmented, that's all. Of course, you can ask me an honest question, Josh. I'll answer Anya's question while I'm waiting. We regret not checking our species of dino heavy-handed with, well, yes, planted directly onto the dino with a pipette and added more biomedia for bacteria. Okay, yeah. The beauty of a liquid supplement like NComp is, while it will go into dormancy in the bottle, as soon as it hits water, it starts to wake up. It is not like a powdered bacteria where there is a germination stage and then a vegetative stage where it's actually actively growing. That is the reason why the powdered versions of bacteria last for 2.5 years on the shelf and up to 6 years in the fridge. You're going to use it before then. If you don't, I mean, okay, but yeah. Okay. Very good question, Josh. With your products, do you do a KH buffer powder? If you do, can I give it a go and compare it with the Aquapix as a comparison? I'm not going to, you can do whatever you like, compare it with whatever you like. I know that the Aquapix KH buffer is really good. I'm not sure what's in it. But if you breed African cichlids, obviously, you know all about KH and calcium and dissolved minerals and reef lake chemistry and things like that. I have been developing a product. I wasn't going to mention this. Thanks, Josh. I'm developing a product that I will be releasing shortly. That is a 100% potassium-based alkalinity solution. So for the reefers out there, I have noticed that there is a 100% improvement with slightly or moderately elevated levels of potassium. When we weren't measuring potassium, but we were using KH buffers like potassium hydroxide and stuff like that in reef systems, we noticed a vast improvement over just using sodium bicarbonate. So this potassium-based buffer is only going to be potassium carbonate and some bicarbonates and things like that. I'm going to calculate the alkalinity contribution and everything like that, so that when you're using it either in a freshwater aquarium or a saltwater aquarium, not only will you be dosing alkalinity, but you'll be dosing potassium, and potassium is one of the most underdosed ions in both freshwater and saltwater. We talked about potassium and how it drives almost literally friggin' every metabolic process in the fish's body and in the aquatic environment in our last live stream. Mobilize your minerals, where we talked about dissolved salts and minerals in the aquarium. Alkalinity coming to that too. If you haven't seen that yet, Josh, I would definitely recommend that you go and watch that after this. But I'm going to be releasing that soon, and 100% you can try it, Josh. I would love to send it to you because I love real world feedback and I love honest feedback, and it sounds like you know what you're talking about when it comes to cichlids. So I will keep you in. I will try and keep everyone informed of when that's going to happen. Essentially, yeah, I'm just getting like information, website page put up, dosing all sorted out, application rates. It's going to be available as, you know, a bulkish chemical to begin with for aquaculture facilities and large coral facilities, stores and things like that, to buy a very effective, very pure, high grade alkalinity supplement that supplements potassium simultaneously to use in their store, and available as a plain package product like these probiotics. It'll have all the details on it and stuff. It'll be a white label for now until I get the labeling sorted out. But it's the function. It's all function, no fluff. You know, that's my kind of ethos. So, you know, if I can get the product there and I know it's going to work and be effective, as long as it's got a good label on it with the dosage instructions and things like that to get people, you know, get it in the hands of people, then I can sort out the labeling afterwards. But definitely it's about to drop. As I said, I wasn't going to mention that, but there you go. Thank you. If you had to give an elevator pitch on the difference between your bacteria and a well-known brand, which most shops stock, what would you say? Okay, well, I mean, it's all different sorts of bacteria that I have. The main difference is that I can custom compound a mix for you. I can tell you what every strain in there does, how it works synergistically with the others. And then what we're going to get into later is CFU per mil concentrations in the bottle after dosing and why that matters. And I can tell you the CFU concentration of it. I can tell you why the dose rate is where it is because of the CFU concentration. I can also say that in relation to my NCOM product, that there's no other product really that both simultaneously nitrifies, denitrifies, and to some extent waste assimilates, because it's a consortium. It's grown as a consortium it's grown on OCK. So that's how OCK come about as a food source of bacteria, because I optimized the formula to grow the bacteria here in the bioreactors here in the lab. So, which, you know, is my garage. So with the lab set up in it, stainless steel fermenters, all the gear. So that's the main difference. I can not only tell you how it's grown, what it grows on, what cell concentration it is, and why it's dosed that way to ensure the best chance of it working, but also the strains in my mix are not in any other mix. So that's the main difference as well. I know they're not in any other mix because I developed them myself. They're probably floating around in the air and in different, you know, solutions, substrate solutions, sediments, blah, 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 things around. But isolating individual strains of bacteria, then bench testing them, then working out how to grow them, then working out how to grow them in a consortium effectively so they synergistically work with the other strains within that same consortium isn't an easy task. So that would be the difference, if that made any sense and didn't sound like bullshit to you. So, oh, Anya, thank you. Gravel vacuum is very therapeutic. Yeah, not important in gamma irradiated. However, I will say that if bacteria is imported with permits, that it's not gamma irradiated. So you can actually, as long as the process is proven to be with pure strains, non-disease causing strains and things like that, that bacteria won't be gamma irradiated. So stuff like Dr. Tim's from Argy and things like that, that wouldn't be gamma irradiated. Because he would have the permits to import them without gamma irradiation, because it would be no point in importing the product if it was gamma irradiated. And I know that because I've imported many a product and many a strain from overseas in the past, and I know pretty much how the permit application and process works. And it's painful, but I had it down to a fine art by the end of it. No, not at all putting me on the spot, mate. This is exactly what this format's for. Question and answer. Bring it on. More, please. That's fantastic that you got it from Gallery Aquatica too. Absolutely great. Fantastic. Again, thank you, Gallery Aquatica. Those guys are really knowledgeable. They know their shit. I mean, they're marine biologists for a start. So, you know, that works in their favor. And yours. So where were we before we got sidetracked? BOD. Okay, so heterotrophic bacteria break it down. It adds to the BOD, the biological oxygen demand. So that's where all your biological oxygen demand starts and where your ammonium nitrite comes from. You will notice that the interactions and processes behind breaking down the solid waste within the system are actually more complex, involved, and varied, and a lot more, you know, prevalent than the nitrification within the system. Nitrification as part of bacteria and microbial application is a very small amount of what actually happens in the microbial herd within an aquatic system. So you're probably starting to get that feel that everything sort of relies on the heterotrophs, but it's a fine balance as well. So we need to get that sort of under our belts a little bit. Belt under our belt? What's this? This isn't... Anyway. Organic waste enters the system. The heterotrophic bacteria break it down. This can happen in anaerobic and aerobic applications and areas. So oxic and anoxic areas, oxygen rich and oxygen free or oxygen limited. And this is why I wrote all this down, because this gets confusing. They consume the organic carbon from this waste that's floating around in the water. They use oxygen as their electron acceptor. Now, the electron acceptor is what they use to breathe, okay, the oxygen that they need. Anaerobic bacteria still use oxygen, but through denitrification and sulfur-loving bacteria that, you know, reduce sulfur-reducing bacteria, they get the oxygen from the NO3 or the SO4. They get the oxygen out of that. And that's where either nitrogen gas is stripped off, or if it's a sulfur-reducing bacteria, like in a denitrification or in a deep bed sand filter, that's where you can get, if you're not careful, the build-up of hydrogen sulfide in an anaerobic area, but it's still using oxygen as an electron acceptor, just in the form of nitrate or some other highly oxidized molecule. So, if the BOD exceeds the oxygen supply that you're putting into the tank, you get hypoxia, which is essentially the fish suffocate. You know, that's where all your fish kills come from. Hypoxia is a word that you've heard a lot. Right? That, of course, is why aeration is not optional. And in my opinion, as well as Corey from Aquarium Co-op, every tank should have an air stone. If you don't have an air stone in your tank, I will find you. Get an air pump and an air stone. If you want a really, really good quality air stone, you could choose from the 3 current models of the Pro HD diffusers I have, which are the high density, high fired corundum diffusers. These are harder than bonded silica, not even glued silica, bonded silica. These are harder than. The pore size is much better. They're nice and heavy. These bigger ones, I've got 2-inch balls, I've got 2-inch cylinders, and I've got a 50 mil by 20 mil small pencil diffuser as well. Diffuser air stone. So get an air stone in your tank, please. Very important. The circulation it provides is far more than you'll get from the same energy from a power head. I'll tell you that much right now. Oh, wonderful. That's great feedback, Josh. Thank you very much. I understand that the 250ml might be a lot for a lot of people, and this is why I'm currently getting 100ml bottles and getting 100ml labels made for those 100ml bottles to have a 100mm size option for smaller tanks, because it is quite concentrated, but it's quite concentrated because it's more friendly to the environment. It's quite concentrated because that's a function of the effectiveness of the bacteria, because you want to get the right cell concentration into your tank, and you also want to have a little bit more in there as a buffer, because you want the bacteria to actually die off to meet the demand rather than them having to grow up to meet the demand. This is why we artificially cycle and work out the amount of ammonia that's going to be produced from the first feeding and the first addition of fish, to make sure that the artificial addition of ammonia in fishless cycling in aquaculture exceeds the ammonia production that's going to be in the first week or two from the fish, so that the bacteria in the biofilm actually die off to meet the demand, so there's no spikes, rather than it being short and it have to catch up and there being spikes of residual ammonia and nitrite in the water. That's fantastic. Anya and Cam are absolutely fantastic. I've known Cam. I don't know if you guys know how long Cam's been in this industry. He's been in this industry longer than I have. I met Cam when I was 18, when I first started working at Aquasonic, and he was already doing servicing and installs at that point in time. He was the fish guy. He was one of very few service guys in Australia, and one of even fewer ones that did it well, and still does it well. Been in the industry for a long time. Known Cam for ages, known Anya over the last couple of years through Fragorama and through the industry and things like that. Great bunch of people. Cam and Anya and the guys at Gallery Aquatic, absolutely fantastic bunch of people. I know many people that have had success with your PNSB purple non-sulfur bacteria by Brightwell. We obviously can't get it in Australia. Do you plan on making something similar? Purple non-sulfur bacteria is Rhodosomonas palustris, that is on Microbe Market. It is also included in Microplex as one of the 23 strains. I can supply it as a pure strain, and it would also go into something like a dietary product, which I'm going to, like a fish dietary product, which I'm going to also include. But it is in the Microplex. You can buy it per 10 gram on Microbe Market. Let me know what problems you're having. I have another customer who's using both the Rhodosomonas palustris, which is a photosynthetic bacteria, just like purple non-sulfur photosynthetic bacteria. A customer using that to great success on red slime, and what was the other thing? Not dinos. It wasn't dinos. It was red slime and some nuisance algae, and also using the Microplex alongside it, because I sent him a sample of that, and he's having great success with that as well. So it must be the synergistic action of the Microplex as well that's producing a reduction in that. But yes, no, we have purple non-sulfur bacteria, Rhodosomonas palustris photosynthetic bacteria, that are made for exactly that purpose, and that's what I've got a customer using that now. Email me if you want more info, man. I'm quite happy to help you. I'll send you some, GC Reefer. Do you have a YouTube channel? I could just hook you up with a few little sample amounts and shoot them up to you if you wanted to do a little bit of a review, or you wanted to muck around and do some testing and stuff. Quite happy to do that, man. Give me a yell. Send me an email. My email's on the website on the contact us section. Remind me of who you are, though, because when it comes to tomorrow, I will probably forget. Good news for you. Need a 2026 Fragorama big time. Well, Josh, I have emceed the last two Fragorama, so I'm the idiot in the cowboy hat that you've seen. I'm the tosser that wore the footy shorts and the long shorts and the Crocs last year. That was me, the fat-headed dude. Yes, I was, when Fragorama does happen this year, I will most definitely be having a display there. Whether I'm seeing or not will be another question, but I will be available to answer people's questions through there, and I might even just have someone looking after the stand for me if that's the case. I don't even know what's happening with Fragorama at the moment, because it's been delayed because of the move and what's happening in the world and cost of living and everything like that. But I'll definitely be at the next one, so you can come and see me. But I will say, if you have any questions or comments or want to talk and shoot shop or anything like that, just send me an email. I'm quite happy to answer your questions. I want to be able to get back to you straight away, but I'll definitely get back to you. Oh yeah, Jack and John. Jack from Mad Aquariums and John from the Tech Den. Great people. Love both of them. Fantastic. I'll just check because no one's sending me messages. That's good. Right, so off on a tangent, but the chat is really, really interactive at the moment, and this is exactly what I wanted for the question and answer format. So keep them coming, guys, because I can bounce back and forth. I'm the master of dribbling shit, as you know. Right, so we've been over organic carbon. We've been over what the bacteria use it for. Organic carbon also through the liberation of endogenous waste products. Endogenous meaning native within the system, not exogenous or exogenous, which is coming from an outside source that's added, such as vodka, vinegar, sugar, molasses, etc. OCK, for example. So it's carbon-based molecules in the form of sugars, alcohols, organic acids, blah, 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 that serve as the primary energy source for heterotrophic bacteria. So as we mentioned, they have that. They have an electron acceptor. The electron donor is the thing that gets reduced, which is the, in the case of denitrifying bacteria, nitrate. So they grab the oxygen off for the oxygen to respire, and the nitrogen being broken off through a variety of different enzymatic processes and stages is broken off into nitrogen gas. And that's how the nitrogen gas is liberated. It's not because it aims to do that. It's because its main function is to get the oxygen off of the nitrate molecule. Same with sulfur. And the molecule that it's attached to is liberated. Nitrogen, not really a problem. Sulfur and hydrogen sulfide production, big problem. Can be a big problem. Natural liberation, we've all done that. Supplemental dosing, we've done that. Fermentation in anoxic zones, we've done that. So obviously, as I said, it can liberate natural sources of organic carbon within the system, and that's primarily what we want to achieve in a freshwater system. Okay, so the Redfield ratio, but for bacteria, everyone knows about the Redfield ratio, 106 parts per million of carbon to 16 parts per million nitrogen to 1 part phosphorus. That tea is depressingly cold. For bacteria, it's closer to 50 to 10 to 1. So 50 parts per million of organic carbon to 10 parts per million nitrogen to 10 parts nitrogen to 1 part phosphorus. Okay. If any of those become limited, the reduction of the other two will stop. So organic carbon can be added to the system, but assimilatory removal, so the assimilation of the nitrate and phosphate into the bacteria's cell structure, which you then need to remove, or, it needs to break down and dissimilate them into different other parts and things like that. If any of those parts become limiting, the process stops. So they need both nitrogen, phosphorus, and organic carbon to reduce all three. So if you reduce your nitrate, but you've still got levels of phosphorus, you're only going to be able to reduce the nitrate and the phosphorus as fast as more nitrogen from nitrate is produced. Otherwise, if you're dosing organic carbon and either one of those is limited, you're just building up the levels of your organic carbon without reducing your nitrogen or your phosphorus effectively. And this is why in marine systems and reef systems, when people run organic carbon-driven systems like biopellets or vodka, vinegar, sugar, or Nopox or whatever, they will dose back either nitrogen or phosphorus for those nutrient-limited systems to accelerate and artificially rebalance the bacterial ratio, the Triton ratio that Isan discovered and calculated and published, and that will allow you to reduce your nutrient levels even further. Not really required in a freshwater system, but in a marine system, that's why you dose it. Nitrate limitation, we just went into that. As a side note, any nutrient reduction that you run in conjunction with an organic carbon driven system is going to compete with that organic carbon driven system. because the phosphate absorption resin or the nitrate absorption resin that you're using, phosphate absorption resin mostly, does not care whether there's nitrate or organic carbon in the system. It will just strip it regardless. And it's more aggressive as well. Okay. And to get rid of the nitrate and phosphate, you need an active export mechanism like a protein skimmer. This is why it is not a good idea to add organic carbon to a freshwater system. It's a better idea just to let the native or the endogenous organic carbon sources within the tank feed the probiotics that you're adding. Okay, because you've got no way to remove it except for water changes. And it happens a little bit slower in freshwater systems, but eventually it'll eat up all the waste and you'll be kosher. A lot of people, a marine system is a lot more finite than that. You've got corals and everything, so you sort of got to keep it on a knife's edge. That's the difference. So a phosphate removal will outcompete it, which means that your organic carbon isn't going to reduce the nitrate effectively, because you're going to reduce all the phosphate. And then you're going to get nuisance algae because your nitrate and phosphate will be imbalanced, and you've got excess organic carbon in there. So you're going to get snot growing in your tank because you get excess biofilm growth. It's just not a good idea. Pick a nutrient reduction method and stick with it. So if you're going to use a refugium and phosphate absorption resin, go that. Don't use a refugium and organic carbon. Don't use organic carbon and a refugium. I just said that. Don't use a refugium. Don't use organic carbon and a phosphate removal resin or a nitrate removal resin, because you're fighting against the very thing that you're trying to, fuel. So there's a place for it. Having said that, in a system, a marine system, even a reef system that runs a refugium that doesn't run an organic carbon driven system, absolutely no reason why you still can't add probiotics, because they're going to chew up the native stuff within the system and then feed all of that nutrient to the refugium, which is going to grow better, which is going to reduce your nutrient. It's going to clean up your refugium substrate as well as your tank substrate. It's just a good time. All right. You don't have to dose organic carbon to dose probiotics, evidenced by the fact that you don't dose organic carbon, generally speaking, in freshwater systems, and you just dose the probiotics themselves anyway. I mean, for stores, you can add the probiotics to your source water. If you've got dechlorinated fresh or salt water and you want to add it to your water during your water changes, and you go through 1,000 liters every 3 days or 1,000 liters a week or whatever, you got a 1,000 liter tank, go and dose the bacteria into there, give it 3 or 4 days to wake up and get colonized and everything, and then every time your system tops up, you dose some probiotics into your system. And if you're smart, you'll be aerating your storage water to get rid of the CO2 and rebalance the carbonic acid ratio in there as well. So the aeration will help to colonize the bacteria as well. Happy days. Hey, see, I'm giving you all these free ideas. Nitrate limitation, we've done that. GFO, we've done that. Electron donors and electron acceptors. How the bacteria actually breathe. This is the big one. Strap yourselves in. Before we move on, I will check the chat. Is there a situation of having too much bacteria in my reef tank, i.e. weekly adding NComp, or once it's hit its peak, excess bacteria just dies off? We're going to get into dosing, CFU levels, heterotrophic bacteria, bacterial metabolism and reproduction, plateaus, redosing, frequency, everything like that later on. I'm going to explain that in detail, so hold your horses because it's coming up. Thank you, GC Reefer. That parameter I find hard to understand, so I will be honest, is phosphate. Okay, so phosphate, I mean, everything uses phosphate from bacteria to your fish. That's what ATP is. Again, back in the salts and minerals, we talk about that metabolism and phosphate being important in there as well. So, go and watch that too. Phosphate essentially fuels algae, but it's also required to a certain extent dietarily, and it's required for your plants as well. Excess, you're going to get blackbeard algae growth. Imbalance of nitrate and phosphate, blackbeard algae growth. If you use a buffer that is an acid buffer, and it's not, and it's a buffer, not an acid, so it's phosphate based. If you're using a buffer to reduce and lock pH, or even just normal pH down, which is sodium biphosphate, you're going to be adding phosphate to your system. It's incredibly good at buffering pH to a certain pH level, or reducing it if you're just using normal sodium biphosphate to knock the pH down and keep it there, because phosphate-based buffers are incredibly strong at reducing pH and holding it there, even against a very high carbonate hardness. So by using a phosphate-based buffer, you could have a carbonate hardness of 110 parts per million and have a pH of 7.1 if you wanted to, using sodium biphosphate pH down as a phosphate-based buffer. So don't use that. Only use alkalinity-based buffers. You've got African cichlids anyway, so that's fine. But you're going to get phosphate from your food and all sorts of crap like that as well. So yeah, phosphate removal. But your bacteria is going to help with that. The probiotics will help with that. Microplex as well. It's going to help to reduce phosphate and remove phosphate to a certain extent. But phosphate is going to be removed through water changes, buying better food that's more water stable. So food that stays stable in water for a longer time. So if it's overfed, it's not going to break down quickly. It'll give you more time to notice it and remove it, or for the fish to clean up the excess. A lot of different factors. Food is very important. Food selection is incredibly important. Spend 30% more on food and you'll have 300% better success. Guaranteed. It's like we wouldn't be happy living on bread and water. We'd survive, but we wouldn't be happy living on bread and water. Same as your fish. Give them some love. You know, frozen food, dry food, a really good quality dry food too. You know, like really good quality dry food. I'm talking like, New Life Spectrum. You know, like Hikari is a really good brand. Ocean Nutrition frozen foods and dry foods are a really good brand. Dainichi is a bloody awesome food. Like, oh, so good and really water stable. Like, will last over 2 days in the water without breaking down. It's ridiculous. Same as New Life Spectrum, incredibly water stable. So that plays a very big role too. Okay, sweet. Good. Glad I could connect the dots for you, Josh. Being told that by Anya. Awesome. No worries. We will continue, and I will check the chat in a minute. Okay, so electron donors and electron acceptors. The electron acceptor in heterotrophic bacterial and autotrophic, mostly heterotrophic bacterial metabolism and respiration, is the molecule that accepts the electrons, or, and this is where it's confusing, gets reduced or oxidized. This is what the bacteria breathes. The terminal electrons sink in their metabolic chain, and is the terminal electron sink in their metabolic chain. Okay, so that's the oxygen. So in an oxygen-rich environment, they're going to use oxygen floating around in the water. Okay. In oxygen-free or oxygen-poor environments, they're going to use nitrate because they're going to strip the oxygen off the O from the NO3, and nitrogen gas is the byproduct. Okay. The difference with all other bacteria that or the majority of bacteria that denitrifies and dissimilatory removes nitrate, and NComp, is that NComp does the dissimilatory nitrate to nitrogen gas aerobically. So you don't need a oxygen-free zone. There's no chance of hydrogen sulfide production, and it's more attuned, suited, and accustomed to feeding on organic form of liberated organic carbon forms from organic waste. So it is, you got all the benefits with none of the side effects, and none of the downsides, like hydrogen sulfide production or having to buy a special nitrate reactor or something like that, you know. Sulfate, obviously getting it from the SO4, like we talked about. That's in highly anoxic environments, not just oxygen poor. So when it's highly anoxic, so like no oxygen whatsoever in a really deep bed or something like that, you run the risk of hydrogen sulfide production, which is that rotten egg smell. Okay. CO2 is also used, the O in the CO2, but it's used in reduction of methane. So in fermentative methane reactors, not very common in the aquatic environment. Honorable mention, not really relevant to us. The electron donor is the molecule that donates the electrons or gets oxidized and broken down, okay? This is the bacteria's food and what they're consuming. So an electron acceptor is what they're breathing, just like us, oxygen. The electron donor is what it's consuming. It's chewing on. It's dinner. So that could be organic waste such as proteins, lipids, and carbohydrates. It could be ammonia for the nitrifiers, and it could be hydrogen. It could be hydrogen sulfide for no, it would be solid waste and things like that. But yes, the fundamental relationship is electron donor being the food, with the electron acceptor being the breathing gas or the respiratory gas, equals plus energy equals waste product. So yeah, that's generally speaking. Whereas in nitrification, it is oxygen, ammonia or nitrite, and alkalinity. Okay, so for an example, so the electron donor would be the organic carbon and the other waste products in the system that it is using. So organic carbon acts, so like we're talking about, you can add organic carbon or you can liberate it from waste products. It liberates the organic carbon by eating the waste product. So technically it's eating both, okay? And it's producing enzymes that are breaking down that product, releasing and liberating the organic carbon. It's pretty involved and complicated, and different bacteria do it slightly different ways. So then the electron acceptor is the nitrate. It breaks off the oxygen from the nitrate, and the nitrate is broken down from nitrate to nitrite, NO2, to nitrous oxide, to N2O, and then to N2 gas via different enzymatic processes that require different vitamins, minerals, amino acids, metallic compounds, trace elements, and things like that. Dimax foods, haven't used them. Couldn't tell you. Yeah, haven't used them. I use, because predominantly I sell Otahimi to aquaculture facilities, and I also rebag it for people that want smaller amounts that don't want to buy a whole 2 kilo bag of Otahimi. So I predominantly use that in all my tanks and all my breeding ponds that are now inside in the garage, and all my tanks indoors and things like that. I have mostly because I know Chris Talbot really well from Aqua Premium, and I sell some of his stuff through the online store for some of my aquaculture customers. I regularly get Dainichi and New Life Spectrum and smattering of other different things from him as well. So I use those foods as well, but I can say with absolute confidence that I have not tried Dimax foods. So I couldn't answer that for you. I'm sorry. I have heard it stinks though, and the fish go after it. Water stability, I've got no idea on at this point. So when you do that with the denitrification, and that is dissimilatory because it is dissimilating the oxygen from the nitrate, the nitrogen gas is going. Okay, so it's dissimilatory and it's disassembling the nitrate. Assimilatory is it's taking the nitrate and the phosphate to build cell structure to reproduce, and then you need to strip that cell structure to get rid of the nitrate bound in it. That's why you need a skimmer in an organic carbon-driven system, because it's aerobic, not anaerobic. Okay, it's in the water column and it's building cell structure, and you need to harvest that off, just like you need to harvest your refugium, except it's bacteria and not plants that you're harvesting. And you're harvesting the bacteria with a protein skimmer, not a pair of scissors. So the nitrogen gas bubbles out of the system and it's gone. So in a denitrification system, in large smolt systems in Tasmania for salmon and things like that, you can actually, in the denitrification systems, you can see big bubbles hitting the surface, and that's nitrogen gas degassing from the system as the denitrification occurs. And they run their nitrate at, like, you know, they try and keep it sub sort of 400. You know, they're feeding 4 or 5 tons, 8 tons of food a day, 8 tons, 8,000 kilos of food a day. Like, it gets up there. They use a lot of food, a lot of water, a lot of treatment. Yeah. So, right. So, why probiotics help to rebalance that system and rebalance your microbial herd? It's because the probiotic strains that are chosen for their growth and metabolic byproducts and things like that are really, really efficient at using organic carbon. So you get more bang for your buck for both liberated organic carbon and the organic carbon that you might add if it's a system that you're adding organic carbon to. They're also chosen for their ability to produce bulk enzymes, which obviously breaks down the waste faster, liberates more organic carbon, which liberates and breaks down the nutrient sink, which is either solid or dissolved waste within the system. Again, more efficiently. A lot of them are facultative anaerobes, so they can switch between oxygen and nitrate when the oxygen is gone. Which native bacteria, you don't know whether they're going to be able to do that or not. And because you're adding it through probiotics in a concentrated form, you can be guaranteed that you're getting enough in there and of the right strain, okay, for it to be effective. So the oxygen cascade, essentially, the people that need to breathe first are the bacteria, because they're the most important people, because that's what's cleaning up everyone's, duties. So they, fart, poop, scheißen, they need to, do their job. So the bacteria always get first bite of the cherry when it comes to oxygen, and the majority of the bite of the cherry when it comes to oxygen, in fact, because they've got the most important job. They always choose the electronic step that gives them the most energy in this order: oxygen, nitrate, sulfate, CO2, like we talked about. Oxygen obviously has the most energy yield. It's the easiest to grab because it doesn't need to be broken down by enzymatic or metabolic or biological processes. It's directly available, and it should be abundant within your system because you've got fish in there and they need oxygen too. So there's no reason why you shouldn't be adding it through aeration or circulation or both. So if you've got enough, you really don't have a problem. That's why deep sand beds and live rock work. It's because they create a gradient from the oxygen-rich zone to the anoxic zone, or the deep oxygen-free zone or oxygen-limited zone, and the different bacteria can colonize those layers. That is the concept behind Marine Pure. Even the balls produce denitrification because it's really only in the first 5 millimeters that oxygenation really lasts for, and then after it passes that level, even though there's bacteria in there that can, colonate the internals of the Marine Pure or any other porous media for that matter, it doesn't have oxygen anymore because in the top layers it's been reduced and stripped out. Okay, same thing that live rock does. Marine Pure does it in an engineered way so it doesn't block, and you can remove it so you can wash it. A bit hard to do that with live rock and sand and deep sand bed and stuff like that. This is why modern biomedias exist. But that's an example for you. Okay, bacterial strains, and I'm going to check the chat because I just saw something pop up. How many strains are in NComp? Approximately 8. So there is 8 different strains of nitrifiers and denitrifiers. So within those 8 strains, there's nitrifiers and denitrifiers that do nitrification and denitrification at different points within that, within the process of nitrification or denitrification. And then it is then bolstered by the addition of probiotic strains that help to break down any residual solids or anything in the system from the bacteria producing metabolites and cells and dead cells and stuff within the bioreactor. For support, probiotic strains, as we're going to go into, producing metabolites with help to reduce, pathogenic or unwanted bacteria. So it's like a bacterial probiotic soup. Those strains, while they do waste assimilate and you will get benefit from that, is not as powerful or at the concentration of, say, microplex. So this is 1 mil per 500 liters. This is 1 mil per 100 liters, and the predominant strains in here are nitrifying and denitrifying, not the predominant strains in here, which are probiotic. Right tool for the job. Get the right tradesman on site at the right time, essentially. Does that include matrix? Look, I haven't used matrix for a long time. Matrix is a form of sintered glass. Sintered glass, like your ceramic noodles with really small pores, Siperax, sintered glass, matrix, stuff like that. the pores block really quickly. So generally speaking, it's only the surface area on the outside that you end up with. This is why moving bed media was created. This is why bioballs work so well for nitrification. Yes, they are nitrate bombs, and that's why no one uses them in marine systems anymore. But that's because they're so good at their job. That's all they're made to do is convert ammonia and nitrite to nitrate. So if you've got high nitrate levels with a trickle filter, it's doing its job. It's doing what it's supposed to do. Except there's just too much oxygen, so there's no denitrifying bacteria. Marine Pure, again, coarse foam, but it blocks. Marine Pure resists blocking really, really well, as does moving bed media in a moving bed filter. That's why moving beds were created, for sewage treatment plants with really high TSS and solid loads, total suspended solids and solid loads, waste particles, essentially. So there's medias that are better and medias that are not so great. My opinion is that Matrix, while it's very effective and it's a good product and it is slightly porous, over time it will block, and you need to be able to keep that clean or pre-filter it really fine to keep it clean and keep it functioning. Marine Pure is really where it's at. I mean, there are other marine type medias that use smaller particles and things like that, but the argument here is that you want usable surface area, and usable surface area needs oxygen and water flow, regardless of the bacteria, whether it's anaerobic or aerobic. And if you can't get that water flow to the bacteria, then you can't get the oxygen to them and you can't get the food to them. And if the pores are too small, they close too quickly and they block, and therefore that surface area is not usable. So it's usable surface area that you're looking for. Okay. Marine Pure blocks, Marine Pure balls, Marine Pure plates, a variety of other larger pore medias. There's quite a few on the market. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Yes. Anyway, moving. So, bacteria strains and how they use organic carbon. So, probiotic bacteria isn't just like bacteria in a bag or bacteria in a bottle. And you don't just dump it in and walk away. Okay. Now, on the majority of supplements, bacterial supplements, that's exactly what is implied that you do. But there's a lot more to it, and you will get better results if you understand it. So, what actually happens, and these are the things that you also need to look out for to gauge the effectiveness of your probiotics in your tank. Okay, so the first thing they do is they do enzymatic pre-digestion. So they produce a shitload of enzymes that are like lock and key mechanisms that help to digest and break down specific different foods and waste products. Like these enzymes are like proteases, amylases, lipases, and cellulases. Cellulases for cellulose and wood material, proteases for proteins, so on and so forth. Lipases for lipids. You get it, right? They chop large. There's enzymes are scissors, right? We know this. Same thing happens in beer brewing. Same thing happens in bread by adding yeast. Same thing happens. It chops large molecules into smaller ones so it can be digested easier and so that the molecules are less complex to eat. And that releases organic carbon into the system, which they use to further digest the waste. Okay. In a freshwater system, a healthy biofilm is something that you can't see. So if you've got biofilm growth in your freshwater or even in your saltwater system, that's no bueno. You don't want that, because that's an indication that there's too much organic carbon and that there is a stress on the oxygen levels within the system, because the BOD levels have increased so much that bacteria and biofilms that are usually 100 microns thick are now 10 millimeters thick. And there's no way that all that biofilm can be healthy, because after the first 100 microns, oxygen diffusion within a biofilm ceases. It's completely consumed by the top 100 to 250 microns of biofilm. So if you're adding organic carbon to, say, a freshwater tank where you want biofilm or something like that, oxygen is a big risk. Excess biofilm production is a big risk, and it's not really required, because there's so much organic carbon within the system and the biofilms are everywhere and invisible. The grazing that you're getting from your animals that are grazing on biofilm, which is the only reason that you would accelerate that in an aquatic system, apart from remove nitrate and phosphate and nutrient levels and waste levels, that's the only reason you do it. You don't need to have it growing in clumps and things like that and visible for it to be a food source, because it's literally reproducing itself every 15 to 30 minutes. And any biofilm that's thicker than 100 to 250 microns is potentially harmful. So, yeah. Natural organic carbon within the system, all you need. Yeah, don't bother, unless of course you've got some sort of removal mechanism within the freshwater system where you can treat it like a protein skimmer. It's not something I'd recommend for everyone unless you're very, very, very experienced. In a saltwater system, obviously, you've got the protein skimmer continually stripping it out as it's being produced, so you're all sweet. It depends on the coral rubble. It depends how porous it is. Biofilter bacteria, they just need surface area and they need access to nutrient, water flow, and oxygen. As long as you can meet those demands, you're fine. That's why marine pure is so good at what it does, and other porous medias like that are so good at what they do. I mean, even really coarse black foam, if it's been pre-filtered, is an awesome biological media. It just takes a lot to wash it out, and it doesn't stay clean. It eventually blocks. So, yeah, avoiding the blocking. But, I mean, you know, you can use coral rubble. You can use pea gravel. This is why under gravel filters work, because the pea gravel acts as your biological filtration, and you keep it functioning regularly by regular gravel vacuum, just like you should in a normal system. But you can reduce that significantly through the application of probiotics. So, where we're up to, step 2, organic carbon uptake. I need a drink of water because my mouth's getting dry. So, when that organic carbon is liberated, they can then grab those smaller carbon molecules to then fuel more nutrient uptake, and then they use oxygen from either aerobic or anaerobic sources, from oxygen or nitrate, or if it's really anaerobic, sulfur, which we don't want, to then metabolize the carbon for energy and growth, and then they eat nitrate and phosphate. The difference between, we've talked about dissimilatory versus assimilatory nitrate and phosphate reduction. So assimilatory means they incorporate that into their cell structure. Dissimilatory means they break it off. Okay, we've been through that. Assimilatory removal, assimilatory denitrification, and waste removal in general, nitrate, phosphate, solid waste, everything. A protein skimmer removes the bacteria that floats around. Everything else is, because essentially they break it down, then they break down the broken down particles, and then they use the broken down particles as food to further break down the particles that are there, and then the particles that get produced as they go along. I don't know if anyone understood that, but it sounded like it was right. So, yes. So in assimilatory nutrient removal, nitrate, phosphate, everything else that floats around in the water, amino acids, proteins, fats, lipids, oils, everything that comes out of organic waste in general, microparticles, you name it, gets removed by the protein skimmer. That removes the nutrient, okay, which you can further fuel by adding organic carbon to increase the amount of cells that grow and the amount of nitrate and phosphate that's taken up, which you then remove. Filter feeders, like corals, sponges, and clams, feed on bacterioplankton. So anyone that's got a moving bed in their system or a biopellet system that's sloughing off of bacteria, the corals are feeding on that. Every time you add organic carbon or probiotics to the system, as the organic carbon fuels bacterial growth, or you add probiotics, which then bloom within your system and continue to, your corals eat that, okay? It is a 35 to 40% protein content. It makes up about 80 to 85% of marine snow. So why not get the extra benefits of it through cleaning up your entire system and feed your filter feeders at the same time? And all of those beneficial strains are then ingested, which then pass on internal benefits for immune stimulation, disease reduction and immune boosting and disease fighting, pathogen resistance, immune boosting, nutrient uptake, coloration, you name it. Okay. Mechanical filtration captures the biofilm flocculated waste particles, but they sit in the system. This is why, if you're not removing them from a freshwater system, that they're going to sit there until they eventually get broken down. And this is why fueling excess growth with organic carbon in a freshwater system is not a good idea. You can do it at your own risk. The only caveat to that is in a freshwater system, when you are culturing your biofilter or maturing your tank, you can add organic carbon then, because there's no food and macro and micronutrients and trace elements and everything like that coming from the fish food, because you haven't got any fish in there. You're putting ammonia in there, so you need to put a varied diet in there, and that's what OCK is. OCK is an organic carbon supplement, but it's derived from organic sources. There is no alcohol in there. It is completely organic. It is derived from marine sources. So it's like marine biomass that is in there. It contains vitamins, it contains minerals, it contains amino acids. It contains a metalloenzyme complex of different trace elements that are crucial to nitrification and make a dramatic difference to whether you're getting nitrite spikes or nitrate or anything like that. So, and it's a lot more flexible. It is a lot more complex than, say, in terms of the organic carbon molecule, than, say, vodka or vinegar or sugar, because that's refined organic carbon sources. But it does have a direct, quick-acting organic carbon source in there as well, which again is alcohol-free. And all of the products within OCK are also readily taken up by filter feeders like corals and things like that as well. So it kind of acts as a little bit of a feeder as well, which then feeds your bacteria, plankton, which your corals feed on as well. It's all good. It's all a good time. So we've been through that. Okay, so why must you redose? And this is where we're getting onto dosing here. Why must you redose? Mutation. Mutation is a problem. Heterotrophic bacteria produce every 20 to 30 minutes. And the rapid reproduction means that they can eat themselves out of a food source very quickly. And that's why you need to redose, depending on how dirty your substrate is, how much nutrient you've got, so on and so forth. When they get no more nutrient in the system, they die off. In a marine system, obviously, you're feeding heavily and you are dosing organic carbon too. But if you don't have a varied enough diet in there for them, you run the risk of getting like dominant species and things. That's what OCK avoids, because it is so varied and so complex, and it's from organic marine biomass, that it doesn't it doesn't fuel one sole type of bacteria. Even if you get limited on the other nutrients, it's not going to it's not going to unbalance your system essentially. So that's why you need to redose, and the frequency depends on the amount you're dosing each week, plus the amount of waste in your system. Okay, so a higher waste system is going to need more bacteria more often. The lesser waste system is going to need less bacteria less often. Pretty simple. Okay, so each generation a slight mutation occurs. So it's like making a copy of a copy of a copy and getting corruption in a data file, right? Exactly the same thing. And then over time, through that mutation and older bacteria and multiple generations and things, they get less efficient at the job that they were bred and designed to do. So they produce less enzymes, they do it less quickly, they're less efficient at utilizing organic carbon and all that sort of thing. That's why you have to redose. Certain strains are more persistent than others. The only real exception to that is nitrification when you're establishing a biofilter, because arguably once you establish the biofilter, you shouldn't really need to add more biological filter bacteria again. The exception to that, obviously, is if you're dosing, say, NComp, which is your biofilter bacteria, but for active nitrate removal, which it will do naturally with the natural and native organic carbon sources within the system without the addition of organic carbon. And it will be fueled excessively by the addition of organic carbon as well, because as we've said, there's 8 different strains of bacteria in there, heterotrophic and autotrophic, as well as probiotic strains as well. Okay. So unless you're adding it for nitrate removal or dyno treatment or something like that, generally speaking, you shouldn't have to add it. So if you've got a stable system with stable biological filtration and no dyno issues and things like no nitrate issues and things like that, you shouldn't really need to dose NComp, okay? Or you're restarting a system, or you've done a big overhaul and you just want to make sure that you haven't like disturbed things too much, chuck a bit of NComp in there. But otherwise, the majority of your ones is going to be like Microplex or sub 6 or PMX8 or a certain strain that you're buying, for example. Generally speaking, every 7 to 14 days you should redose, and then you can adjust both your dose rate volume and your dose rate frequency accordingly from there, up and down, depending on the demand of the system, which totally is regulated, as we've discussed, by BOD, biological oxygen demand. Okay. I'll just check the chat again. Off topic, what's your thoughts on polyfilter? That's what pregame was for. To talk about stuff that isn't related to the stream. If you want to talk to me about polyfilter, you can send me an email. I don't sell polyfilter. Premium sells polyfilter, and if you're a aquarium store worth their salt, pardon the pun, you also sell polyfilter, and we'll be able to get it through those guys as well. Email me. I won't spend time on it now because it's way off topic and it's not my product, but I love it, and I've been versed on it quite comprehensively, and I can tell you exactly what it does, how it does it, why it does it, and why it was made. Send me an email. Sorry to cut you off there, but I've got to stay on topic, otherwise I will get distracted. As we discussed when we're culturing biofilter or anything like that, more bacteria is generally better because you want the bacterial colony to die off to meet the demand rather than have to build up. But if you've never dosed probiotics before and you've got a waste sink, that's the way it's going to work. You can avoid that by doing a waste siphon and stuff, but generally speaking, yeah. We talked about liberation of organic carbon. I'm skipping through things here because there's multiple modes just to remind me, but yeah. Okay. And redosing and growth and things that as dead bacterial cells die, any nutrient they got bound up in them is then released, as well as the organic carbon, as well as the metabolites and all their cell structure and everything like that for the next generation. You avoid that in a marine system by removing it with a protein skimmer, and that's how you actively get in front of your nitrate levels and phosphate levels and waste levels in general, and clean your system up and drop your nutrient levels if you're running an ultra low nutrient system, for example. It's a similar process when they produce PHA, PHB, things like that. A lot of my strains actually produce that as a byproduct as well. So they produce their own organic carbon as well as liberating it from the natural sources within the system. And this is how your biopellets are made. Foodstuffs like food waste materials are fed into bacterial biomass, a certain strain that's, optimized for producing PHA and things like that to produce the PHA product that is then turned into biopellets that is then either used in packaging, manufacturing, or NP biopellet, reducing biopellets, all those biopellets. The biopellets are great, by the way, self-regulating. I love them. As long as you know how to use them and use them properly, they're freaking great. Marine, however, less is more when it's combined with organic carbon, as we've discussed, because we're fueling the bacterial biomass growth. So we don't want to overdo it, and this is why we don't do it in the freshwater system, generally speaking, because we don't have a removal mechanism such as a protein skimmer. Okay. Adding too much bacteria in the presence of artificially added organic carbon will result in an explosive bloom, and you could reach critical mass, which could result in a die-off, which could then result in a spike, because regardless of whether it's taking up nitrate or phosphate, it's taking up stuff to produce cell structure. And when that dies off, you can get an ammonia spike because it's protein that's dying off, and protein, when it's broken down, produces ammonia. This is why the protein content of your food is important to calculate the size that your biofilter needs, because the protein content directly influences the amount of ammonia that is produced at the end that you need to know to size your biofilter. Okay. And, marine systems are ion soup. Like, it's got everything in it. Bacteria love salt water. They love it. You know, partial strength salt water, full strength salt water. They love it. It's got everything in the. It's got all the trace elements they'd ever need. It's got all the macro elements they'd ever need. It's high in pH. It's a stable carbonate hardness. It's well oxygenated because, you know, if you haven't got bacteria in there, you haven't got any coral or fish. So it's going to be oxygenated, right? They love it. It's your perfect environment for them. Having said that, the osmotic pressure of the salt water does reduce their metabolism to a certain percentage, okay? Because it's desiccating to a certain extent, the salt, right? It's like the goldfish on the Titanic. He wasn't worried because he's just, oh, yeah, I'm going to fall in the water. That's a real concern. And then he's just like, oh, it's a bit salty, isn't it? Jesus. So, yeah, same with bacteria. Yeah, so some strains of I have a question. So, honest question, does that include frozen foods or both dry and so forth? Oh, it involves everything. So the difference is that frozen foods, fresh foods, things like that are up to about 65 to 70% water. So when I'm calculating biofilter sizes for broodstock systems that are feeding them on like a fish fillet, squid diet, things like that, because you're trying to condition them and mature them, it's commonly referred to in aquaculture as feeding them a champagne diet. My broodstock get a champagne diet. It's just they eat better than we do generally. To get egg production and things like that going. But yes, 100% fresh food, like everything that has protein in it will produce ammonia. And that goes for amino acids as well. If you're dosing direct amino acids, you're adding direct amounts of nitrate and nitrogen into the system. And given time, they will form ammonia if they're not taken up directly. The benefit of amino acids, obviously, is that they're in such a bioavailable form that they get stripped up before they can fall out, precipitate, bond with other organic molecules, and then create waste. Cool. Some strains of that require and deserve a special mention. You've probably heard of this one, Bacillus subtilis. If you roll over the majority of probiotic foods on the market today, you'll notice probably Bacillus subtilis, Bacillus licheniformis, Bacillus amyloliquefaciens. These are all very popular strains. Okay, so Bacillus subtilis, it's the superstar, right? It produces huge amounts of antimicrobial molecules, peptides, everything like that. It produces proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, starches, pectins. It produces 3 different antimicrobial peptides, and it's effective against Aeromonas and Vibrio in a variety of different strains, and it's synergistic in aquaponic systems and hydroponic systems for plants as well, for disease reduction as well as nutrient uptake. That includes aquatic plants. Bacillus licheniformis is another organic matter and organic nitrogen reducer, really good for use in ponds. Those two are 2 key strains in sub-6 for phytoplankton support. This Bacillus licheniformis organic matter reducer, bactotracin producer, which is a really strong antibiotic, natural antibiotic, and it's really strong in biofloc systems because it helps to maintain and promote biofilm. So bacteria that aren't great at producing biofilm to glue themselves to other bacteria in colonies benefit from the application of these sorts of bacteria that actively produce different molecules that produce biofilm, because not only is that biofilm packed with antimicrobials, peptides, nutrient base, everything like that for other bacteria to grow but also it suppresses disease-causing bacteria, and that's the main function of competitive exclusion, essentially adding so much good stuff into the water that produces so much good stuff, the bad stuff just doesn't have a chance. Okay. Bacillus valensis. This is a new probiotic and one that I'm pretty confident that only I'm using in aquatic probiotics for aquaculture and aquariums. Bacillus valensis is predominantly used in agriculture as a plant promoting bacteria, but is a broad organic waste remineralizer. So it helps to add microbial biomass and remineralize waste and nutrients from soils and substrate systems, like in your aquarium. It's arguably probably the most versatile bacteria in the range. It does ammonia assimilation, nitrate removal, phosphate solubilization. So it actually releases phosphate for other bacteria to use from places where it's locked up. So it can help with phosphate loaded rock, for example. It'll help to, accelerate that a little bit. Disease suppression, as I said, biofilm formation and competitive exclusion. It does basically bloody everything. It's like a Swiss Army knife of bacteria, probably even more than Bacillus subtilis, which is just a hero of bacteria. That came about from World War II, actually, from treating dysentery. They isolated it from camel manure, actually. They saw the Bedouin tribes, they were doing training in Egypt and Cairo before World War II, before being deployed. And dysentery was going through, and they saw all the Bedouins that they were, doing for, desert training and survival and things like that. The soldiers were getting dysentery, or the runs, like the severe runs. And they saw it, and they started chowing down on fresh camel manure because it was loaded with Bacillus subtilis. They didn't know that at this time. And they said, why the hell are you doing that? And they said, well, when that happens, we do this because it stops it. So what did the US Army do? They took the camel shit, they put it on a petri dish, they isolated a dominant bacteria called Bacillus subtilis, they mass produced it, put it in a capsule, fed it to all their soldiers. No more dysentery. So dysentery, you can thank the treatment of dysentery from camel shit. And Bedouins eating it raw in the desert in World War II, training our soldiers for World War II to fight the Nazis. There you go. Happy story. Not full of shit either. It's a true story. Excuse the pun. Bacillus amyloliquefactions. I love saying that. That is also in sub-6 and microplex and PMX8, I should say, as well. Organic nitrogen it will remove. It will get rid of gelatinous materials. Casein. Starches, ammonium nitrite removal. It has a broad spectrum of antimicrobial production and a broad portfolio of production, and it's excellent in aquaponics as a plant growth promoter and regulator. Oh, Paula's here. Hello, Paula. Lovely to see you. Thank you very much for the plug, Paula. Yeah, I'm working with Paula on a couple of stuff at the moment. If there's anyone that knows as much or more about bacteria and probiotics and microbiology, it's Paula. Yeah, we're doing some pretty fun work at the moment, which it's really interesting. So, and when Paula says they work, you can do that because she does enzyme assays and reduction assays and bench testing and everything at that sort of level. Which, she'll probably be able to correct me on a lot of crap that I say wrong here as well. So I don't know whether it's such a good thing she's here. In all seriousness, no. Yes, thank you, Paula, for dropping in. Thank you very much for joining. I hope you're having a pleasant evening. Penibacillus polymyxia is my favorite bacteria of all time. It is the hero for pathogen reduction, fungal, bacterial, even parasitic. It'll get rid of Aeromonas like that and heal up the bullet hole wounds and just reduce death rate. Like it's fantastic. It's a fantastic probiotic, and it features in both microplex and the PMX8 and the sub-6. Because it breaks down wood and cellulose, it also fixes atmospheric nitrogen. So in a plant application, it'll feed nitrogen directly to the plants, like in a rhizobial system. For peas and things like that, they dose it when they're growing legumes and things, because it helps to fix atmospheric nitrogen and helps to form the nodules of atmospheric nitrogen on the legumes as well. Helps in that synergistic relationship. But it's not going to remove the nitrogen because it fixes atmospheric nitrogen. So if it's in like a phytoplankton mix, it's only going to fix atmospheric nitrogen for then use by the algae, or fix atmospheric nitrogen for then it to be then ripped off with the cell structure with, you know, active export through a protein skimmer or something. It's a biofilm stimulant. It produces polymyxin, and it's one of the only bacteria that produces polymyxin, which is an incredibly potent antimicrobial and antibacterial compound. Biofilm stimulant, phosphate solubilizer, so it'll help to liberate phosphate and get it out of the system, or, you know, feed it to your plants. And it produces phytohormones like cytokinins, auxins, things like that help with plant growth. They are also used for coral growth and bacterial growth and all sorts of other stuff like that. So it's good for use in marine systems with, say, refugiums, macroalgae, and anything else. Pentabacillus polymyxia, my favorite all-time bacteria. If I can be that big of a nerd. Bacillus pumilus, it does a wide range of carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids, and it's a strong biofilm former, and is also widely used in plant systems for a plant growth promoter and regulator as well. Bacillus, sorry, did I finish that? No, I didn't. Bacillus valensis, is a nitrate specific remover, so it does both assimilatory and dissimilatory nitrate removal, and it actively consumes nitrate. Bacillus megaterium is an assimilatory nitrate reducer, also actively solubilizes phosphate and liberates it, and it produces vitamin B12. Rhodopseudomonas palustris, photosynthetic bacteria that we were talking about for red slime reduction, etc. Both assimilatory and dissimilatory nitrate reduction. It's a phototrophic purple non-sulfur bacteria. There you go. Also consumes ammonia and nitrite and produces immune-stimulating polysaccharides amongst a range of other shit. Bacillus methylotrophus is a dissimilatory nitrate reducer and produces plant hormones and stuff like that. Gut health and feed probiotics. We're looking at Bacillus coagulans, Bacillus aerobiatii. They're good for lactic acid production and things like that, as well as Bacillus subtilis. That's a great dietary supplement as well. Predator bacteria, this is the big one. That's Bordella vibrio bacteriovorus. This thing features heavily in both Microplex and in the PMX8, and it actively hunts down gram-negative pathogens like Vibrio, Aeromonas, Pseudomonas, and things like that. It penetrates the cell wall, consumes the contents from inside. So it's self-limiting. It dies off when the prey is depleted. It's got 0 antibiotics, and predators don't have any resistance to it because it's got no antibiotics. It's actually predatory. It goes in and kills them like a scorpion, essentially. You know, punctures them, sucks out the guts. Nitrifying bacteria, we know all about that. We've been over that. Everyone knows about nitrifying bacteria. 3 pathways of nitrate removal. We've already talked about that. We've already talked about electron acceptors, electron donors, assimilatory versus dissimilatory nitrate reduction. I'm not going to bore you any further. And if you are wondering, you can go back and watch it. We've talked about the imbalance of the Redfield ratio. We've talked about enhancing it through the addition of organic carbon. Anamox is another thing. It's anaerobic ammonia oxidation, so it's ammonia reduction in an anaerobic zone. Doesn't really happen in an aquarium, but it is relevant. Sort of works in the reverse of it. It's what my aerobic nitrate removal is in NComp, but in the reverse for ammonia. It's in oxygen-free environments. Electron acceptors, they use nitrite and nitrate again, the electron donors being ammonium, and they use inorganic carbon. So they're not an autotrophic nitrifying bacteria. So they don't use they use inorganic carbon. Sorry, they don't use organic carbon. They use inorganic carbon. So they are an autotrophic nitrifier. I read that incorrectly and got myself mixed up. I'm sorry. Okay, section 5, biofilm. This is the most important thing. I'm trying to wrap up here, obviously, because there's a couple of other things I just want to make note of before we go. So biofilm, we've talked about that. It's a mixture of polysaccharides and different things that they excrete that then bacteria they can use that then has antimicrobial properties and things like that in them. That help with competitive exclusion, as well as they help, not so great biofilm forming bacteria to colonize that area with them as well. It's a synergistic relationship, right? Mostly speaking. They communicate via quorum sensing. In other words, they coordinate their enzymatic activity and talk to each other somewhat like a hive mind. Okay, and they exchange RNA and DNA and all sorts of stuff. This is where mutation occurs as well. Yeah. So the biofilm protects the bacteria from predation from chemicals, from environmental swings, temperature swings, increases in salt, decreases in salt, increases in hardness, blah, blah, blah. You get the idea. The strong biofilm formers like Pentabacillus polymaxia, Pumilus, and Valensis are obviously, instrumental in making sure the biofilm is formed for the other bacteria as well. And there's someone that wants to say hello to everybody. Everybody say hello to Tessie. This is my sausage dog, Tessie. She's a good girl, but she's inside at the moment because she's on heat. So she's not very happy and she's very sooky. Do you want to sit up here, do you? You sit up there. Okay. What are we going on? Yep. So biofilms, again, excess biofilm production. It's no longer biofilm, it's snot. Okay. And snot is not good. If you can see the biofilm, it's too thick. Biofilm should be invisible to the naked eye. Microns, hundreds of microns thick, not millimeters thick and visible to the naked eye. No bueno. Don't do it. And if it happens, stop organic carbon dosing, do a water change, remove as much biofilm as you can. Yeah, that's about it for biofilm. It really can't get any simpler. It can be too thick. Yeah. So, I mean, there is a trend in some different like tilapia use biofilm promotion with molasses because they filter feed just like prawns do, so they get like that out. And they feed on it, but not a lot of other organisms do. And the organisms that do feed on it in an aquarium system, there's more than there is biofilm over every single goddamn surface in that aquarium. And if you're adding probiotics, even if you're not adding probiotics, but you're adding probiotics, the bacterial biofilm is going to be healthier and more abundant. If it's in excess, it's not an indication of good biofilm production. It's an indication of excess biofilm production, and that is bad. So let's not do that. This is why moving bed filters work so well, because they control the biofilm thickness. It's called biofilm control, which means that the shear forces when they're circulating as well as bumping up against each other they exfoliate off all the old bacteria and keep the biofilm nice and thin so it can oxygenate the entire way through and be the most efficient it can. And younger bacteria that is thinner in biofilm is much more efficient than older, thicker biofilms. So why would we want to fuel thicker biofilm that's then going to die off and be inefficient? It doesn't make any sense to me. Don't do it, please. Don't, or I'll find you. So cyano, competitive exclusion, and disease suppression. So cyano, the problem is it is a photosynthetic bacteria. Geez, that got stuck on the tip of my tongue. A photosynthetic bacteria. So when there's no nutrient, it can photosynthesize, right? The worst thing about it is because it sits on the substrate to water interface. If you've got phosphate-loaded rock and you're doing organic carbon dosing, it'll grab the phosphate directly from that substrate water interface and it will grow exponentially there, okay? Even if it doesn't have any nitrate or phosphate, it'll store everything for low nutrient circumstances, and it'll use that in small amounts as well as photosynthesis to then survive indefinitely, okay? So you can have zero nitrate and phosphate in your water and still have cyano because it's all locked up in cyano, and it's soaking out of your rock if you've got phosphate-loaded rock by diffusion and osmosis. Every time you reduce it in the water column, it reduces the concentration in the water column, so it soaks out of the rock into the water column, and the cyano sits right at that interface and is just going, man, party time. I've got all the food I could ever want. Yep, biofilms is normal in aquariums. Excess biofilm is not good, okay? So I'm just saying, don't add sugars, vodka, vinegar, OCK, anything that's going to excessively fuel that biofilm production, because that is biological oxygen demand. And if you haven't got a way to strip it out, it could negatively impact your oxygen levels and your water quality. Just let the bacteria eat the organic carbon as they liberate it, and that means it'll chew everything up and you're not likely to produce excess thick biofilms that are going to consume excess oxygen and cause you problems. Does that make a bit more sense? Yeah, cyano, hate it, don't like it, it can go away. So you can manually remove it. You can increase the flow. You can add calc-water, because high pH over 8.3 to 8.4 cyano does not like it. Tends to just sort of float up, detach, and dissolve and fall apart. It does then release that nutrient back into your system, but it works to keep it at bay. It helps anyway. The competitive exclusion route is obviously dosing bacteria directly on it or into the water column. Now, Rhodocinomonas palustris or other purple non-sulfur reducing photosynthetic bacteria, they have been shown to directly compete with cyano, as well as just producing something with a huge range of enzymes and antimicrobials and biofilm for competitive exclusion, like through Microplex. That'll help you out-compete it as well, just like that other customer's circumstance that I was talking about before, where he's using both the photosynthetic Rhodocinomonas palustris and the Microplex mix and having success with both. In fact, he's got rid of those, and now he's got some hair algae problems because it's breaking down the nutrient in his system and the hair algae is starting to grow. So, you know, a positive, negative, I suppose. It's showing that it's working anyway. So you can do that. Interestingly enough, the old school way to get rid of cyano was to use tetracycline. Turns your water red for a couple of weeks, but after a couple of water changes, it's safe with clams and most corals and fish and things like that. Can knock your biofilter around a little bit, but you just got to be careful of it. But just a normal dose of it, and it'll just kill the cyano. It won't get rid of the symptom, which is excess nutrient and an imbalance of nutrient and an imbalance in the microbial system, but it will kill it. And this is why dosing probiotics works, because of the production of antimicrobial peptides and all that kind of crap. Not crap, good stuff. But literally crap, because that's what they crap out. Yeah, so that's all good. That explains that. I don't think we need to go into that any further. You guys are smart. And that's why regular probiotic dosing equals fewer outbreaks, if any, because it gets rid of the nutrient that they feed on. It just produces a very adverse environment for them to grow to begin with, and all those antimicrobial peptides and things like that walking around in there, the good biofilms and stuff, just reduce the prevalence of it growing. That sort of thing. GFL and raise KH. There you go. Or, yeah, raise pH, like calc-water. Calc-water will raise KH and pH as well as that calcium. But yeah, that's another way to get rid of cyano. GFO and raise your KH. We've been through dosing frequencies and amounts. I will use this time to talk about CFU concentrations. Right. So CFU concentration is colony forming units per mil or per gram. Now, in this product Microplex, in the PMX8 and the Sub-6, it has on the website what the CFU concentration is in the packet. So if you don't want to use the recommended dose rate, which in Microplex and Sub-6 and PMX8 is 100,000 CFU per mil, which is what I consider a sledgehammer dose. That is the colony forming units after you dose it into the aquarium per litre before they start reproducing. So it's only going to get higher from there, right? You can go right down to 5,000. You can go right up to 150,000 or more. Obviously, oxygen is a limiting factor. You need to observe your system. The higher the dose you go, etc., etc. Now, if you know the CFU concentration, which every bacterial manufacturer should be able to tell you, and if they can't, because it's literally one of the most important determining factors in the effectiveness of probiotics. You can have every right strain in the world, but if you're not putting it in there in the right concentration, it's not going to do a damn thing, or it's going to do very little. Okay, so this is why different blends work as well. So we know how much that's going to dose in there, so we can, have a better idea of what it's going to do. We can then adjust the CFU concentration with things like sub-6 and PMX8, depending on whether there's any disease, a small amount of disease, maybe a stress event coming up. Depending on how much stock you've got, you can adjust the dose rate of your sub-6, because if you haven't got a huge amount of stock, you haven't got a huge phytoplankton bloom or as much waste going in, so it doesn't make sense to be adding as much bacteria as you would usually. Oh, Paula, thank you very much. Microplex works wonders for pathogen inhibition. You would probably know that from Stuart's work, I would imagine. So yes, that is more. A couple of Paula's colleagues as well are also using a lot of my probiotics in their trials as well. So thank you very much for that feedback, Paula. That is very, very, very much appreciated, especially because Paula knows what she's talking about, and she wouldn't say it unless she'd seen it happen. So thank you very much. And under a microscope, mind you, so it's pretty, definitive if she's saying it's doing what it's doing. There's a reason she's saying that. So I wish my dog would stop yelping, but that means I have to get up, and I'm not going to do that. So yes, if we know our CFU concentration, you can then compare it to other bacterial supplements. You can be sure that then the dose rate I'm recommending is to certain CFU concentration, and I can tell you what that CFU concentration is predictably going to do with that mix. Okay. Now, when we go from, say, a 22 strain probiotic down to an 8 strain probiotic, like in PMX8, each strain has a different concentration. So you'll see on Microbe Market, each of them has a different concentration of 1 by 10 to the 11th, 1 by 10 to the 8th, 2 by 10 to the 5th, whatever the freak, right? If you use less strains, like in PMX8, with a higher concentration of their base bacteria, the dose rate you're going to get is the concentration of CFU or colony forming units is going to be higher, right? I've got 8 in this. This is 1 gram per 1,000 liters for 100,000 CFU per mil. This has 22 strains in it. It's 1 gram per 500 liters for the same 100,000 CFU per mil. More strains, more variety, less concentration, because some of those strains have a lower concentration and therefore it dilutes the overall concentration, right? So good for establishing microbial diversity and re-establishing balance and getting a lot of different very effective strains into your water. This is good because it has the strains that are only specific for disease reduction in much higher concentrations. So not only are you getting much higher concentrations of those individual strains per dose, but you're getting the right concentration in CFU per mil, and it's flooding them with those main beneficial strains. And then once you get over the disease, you can swap back. Same concept with sub-6, except you're using your phytoplankton blend to regulate what that is. And you get the added benefits of disease resistance, because a lot of the strains in there, which you will see if you go and look at the website, which I'll show you now. So this is Microbe Market. So you can see, I'll just go past all these. This is all custom compounding and everything like that. I'll just check that this is, yes, this is on your screen. That's good. So you'll see that all these individual strains, each one of these, except for Aspergillus niger and Aspergillus oryzae, are in Enterolua yeast, are in Microplex, including cold water bacillus. So in cold water systems, it will actually help to form biofilm and feed nutrients to the other bacteria, helping them to operate in sub 10 degree temperatures. Okay. So you can see how they're all different concentrations, 1 by 5 to the 10, 1 by 10 to the 11th, 1 by 8 by 10 to the 9th, 2 by 10 to the 10th, 1 by 10 to the 10th. So as we start adding all these, they're orders of magnitude less lower. Each number you go down. So it reduces the concentration. So for instance, Microplex So if you go to our probiotics section, it explains the general thing about probiotics as a family page. And then if you scroll down to the bottom, you can see the things within this system. So we've been over microbe market. Microplex, you can see that we've got our strains listed in there, PMX8, and we've also got them listed in sub 6. So let's go and have a look at that. The microplex, as you can see, 22 synergistic strains, and it does it. It shows you the modes of action that it goes through. So it's 5 by 10 to the 10th CFU per gram, which is lower, obviously, as you can see. You get, and it does waste reduction and ammonia neutralization, nitrate and phosphate removal, and everything like that. And it's got the strains in it. Okay, it tells you what it does. The antimicrobial metabolites in the microplex, everything like that. So you got all your information there, right? Dosing and maintenance, 350 to 500 liters. Obviously, the 350 is a bit more of a sledgehammer dose. It's over 100,000 CFU per mil. It's more like 130, but you get the idea. In small systems, either mix up an amount for, say, 50 liters, a couple of taps of the spoon, mix it up in some water, and then dose it with a syringe. It's that easy. For the PMX8, it's much more detailed as it's specifically formulated for disease reduction and pathogen mitigation. So you'll see that all the information is geared towards that. It has all of the different kill mechanisms, all of the strains, what they do, what it controls. These are the organisms that it's proved that the strains in PMX8 are proven to reduce through peer-reviewed papers, white papers and research papers, and that's the only place I've got this information. It's not my personal opinion. It's not observational. This is recorded and peer-reviewed information through university and research trials. Okay, so fungal reduction, parasitic pathogen reduction, viral pathogen reduction. It's even got a section in there about mycobacterium, where it's prevention, not cure, but I want to be transparent about that. 1 gram per 1,000 liters for 100,000 CFU, as you can see right there. Now, so I tell you what the concentration is, and I tell you the strains that are in it and how they work. And one, you're not going to know any of that unless someone with the knowledge tells you. And secondly, how are you supposed to know what you're doing, why it's doing it, how it's doing it, what to look for, and if it's being effective, if you don't know what's in it, what concentration it's in, and the supplier won't tell you that information. So transparency and education is what we're aiming for here, as well as effectiveness, and obviously giving you guys confidence in, what I'm saying this stuff will do, it will actually do. It's just like adding trace elements through Triton, same sort of thing, except, well, look, I can do DNA tests to figure out exactly what, strains of bacteria are in there through DNA testing and microbial colony analysis and things like that. However, it's about $1,000 per sample, and you're not going to pay that. $60 for an ICP test is reasonable. $1,000 for a microbial DNA test, you're not going to be doing that every day. So the least I can do is give you all of the information that you're going to need to make an informed decision and be able to look at the effectiveness and gauge the effectiveness of the product itself. Okay. On top of all this, obviously, I've got blog posts and so on and so forth that explain probiotics and organic carbon reduction and nutrient control and all sorts of stuff. Now, chat. In vitro against several Vibrio strains. Oh my God, Paula, thank you so much for joining and giving this feedback. That's fantastic. Thank you. Is there digital meters to directly measure GH and KH as like the Milwaukee pH meters? Yes, there is. If you go and watch my, well, not to measure individual ions, but I explained it all in the salts and minerals live stream that we did about 3 weeks ago. I go into conductivity, TDS, why you shouldn't use TDS, why conductivity is the raw reading, how you can use conductivity to determine what general hardness is, and then how you can use that to then manipulate the addition of salts, minerals, calcium, magnesium, potassium, and sodium chloride independently in conjunction with using seawater as a reference. So if you go there, that will hopefully answer all your questions. And then if you need to ask me questions, just give me a call, man. Happy to take your call. No dramas at all. Maybe not tonight though, because it might be a little bit much watching another live stream after this one because we're already at 2.5 hours and I'm almost finished. I've got some exciting stuff for the new products, for the skimmers and stuff that I want to show you. Just hang in there. 5 minutes, I reckon, 10 minutes, and we'll be finished with the microbe stuff. Disease suppressing factors. Okay, I'm going to try and pronounce all these names. There's a reason I wrote them down, and I hate Latin. So just bear with me and humor me, okay? Disease suppressing strains: Bacillus subtilis, Bacillus amyloliquefaciens, Bacillus valensis, Panibacillus polymyxia, Bacterial, Vibrio bacteriovorus, and Streptomyces hydrogenans. They produce all of these different metabolites. Surfactant: fengicin, inturin, deficitin, bacillicin, polymyxin, subtilin. They're effective against Aeromonas vibrio and fungal oomocytes. Bacillomycin, different polyketides, broad spectrum bacterial metabolites, as well as broad spectrum against fungal as well. All of these produce mechanisms via competitive exclusion, as well as a range of other antimicrobials. Panibacillus, as we mentioned, produces polymyxin, one of the only bacteria to produce it, and in huge quantities, and it's very potent. That's why it's my favorite. Fusaricidin, colistin, it's incredibly effective against Vibrio, Aeromonas, the columnaris, all sorts of different fungal and bacterial infections, viral infections, pathogen infections. I've used it effectively to help control minor white spot outbreaks that had secondary bacterial infections. So yeah. Bacterial Vibrio bacteriovorus, as we said, that's just runs in like Russell Crowe out of Gladiator and just hacks and chops and destroys. And Streptomyces hydrogenans produces a broad range of antibiotics. 70% of clinical antibiotics that are produced for humans and animals today come from the Streptomyces genus. I'll let that sink in. Gets rid of Saprolegina. I completely butchered that. Again, I hate Latin. I'm sorry. And all sorts of other very hard to kill diseases and things like that. Practical dosing and maintenance. We've been over that. Things that will ruin your system if it is ignored. Insufficient aeration. We've been over that. No protein skimmer in a marine tank. We've been over that. Running GFO with carbon dosing because you'll upset the ratio. We've been over that. If you disturb deep anoxic zones, you're going to release all sorts of low oxygen stuff, hydrogen sulfide, things like that. Don't go doing that. Overdosing organic carbon, so either dosing too much in a marine system where you've got a protein skimmer and it can't keep up, or dosing it in a freshwater system that's got no export system whatsoever. Problems, okay? Be wary. Do your research. Again, this is what this is for. So, yeah, hopefully I can educate you a little bit and give you some confidence, right? Not monitoring it. Obviously, you can put GFO in there. It's absorbing it. It stops it. You put macroalgae in there in a refugium. It absorbs it. It grows. You put natural plants in a freshwater aquarium. They absorb it. You can see them growing. If it gets too much, you can trim them off. The problem with bacterial biofilm is you can see it if there's too much in there, but it's detrimental if it's not removed because it dies off and creates biological oxygen demand. That's the difference. So you need to know what you're dealing with. Red field ratio, we've done. Okay, so the golden rule, as we said before, keep the microbes happy, the microbes will keep the water happy, and the water will keep the fish happy. Okay, it's that simple. You're bacterial farmers. Get used to it. Everything else, strain selection, dosing schedules, testing, the equipment is, all wrapped up in the service and the circumference of that principle in general. generally speaking, if you keep the bacteria happy, the operating parameters the bacteria sit in is, generally speaking, where you want to keep your fish. So if you know that your water quality is good for the bacteria, it's going to be good for your fish. And if you change the water quality for your fish, at least you know that you're changing it positively and your bacteria is still going to work, just like the KH in the African cichlid tank, or dosing the same bacteria into a discus tank or anything like that. Obviously, they have optimum ranges that they operate in, but, they operate across a very wide range of both salinity and pH and temperature. That is the end of the microbe live stream. Thank you very much for joining. I'm about to go into some other stuff. I'm going to put this dog down because my lap is overheating, so everyone can say bye-bye to Tessie. Bye, everybody. You go over there and go and get on the lounge. Right. Okay. Now, skimmers, the SKM skimmers. My first order is arriving. I have bought the lids over separately early to install the washdown systems in them. So I'm going to show you what the difference is with my washdown systems and how they look up close. Okay, this isn't just another skimmer with no washdown system, or it's not a skimmer with, a timer on the freshwater but no timer on the saltwater. So you got to manually do it. Like what? Right. So this is of the smaller skimmers. You can see the attachment in the top, right? The spiral nozzle, which is non-blocking, so you can see the size of the orifice in there. It's got a 90-degree spread pattern, so it sprays a very high volume of water, and that is connected solely to the saltwater line. Okay, any saltwater line you like, it'll be plumbed to the skimmer pump, the Venturi pump. But if you want a higher pressure, you can put it on like your supply pump off a branch line or something like that if you want to as well, right? And that sprays down directly into the cup, so that only salt water is washing the riser tube, so that you don't get dilution of salt water. And if you have got chlorinated water supply, you're not washing it with chlorinated fresh water either and putting chlorine into your system, right? So apart from that, around the outside on a separate system, a separate line that comes in from outside through your mains, is your freshwater washdown, okay? And they consist of, I'm going to see if I can just hold that up there because I'm holding it. Yep, there you go. You can see it. All right. So I'm just sitting them there for the moment because the holes in the bulkheads have to be drilled in and positioned. They will sit there and they will be connected to the fresh water, which only washes down around the outside to knock down the foam and wash the shit out of the system. And that has no way of getting into the riser tube because it doesn't spray, like your riser tube sitting up here, right? So it's not going to spray in, and it sprays all around. And there, which I'll show you on the bigger model in a minute, is where the tube goes in, which is where your skimmer draws its air from. Moist air is a lot more stable, and when the backwash goes off, a little bit of water moisture will get sucked into the airline, which will wash out the airline and decrease and greatly reduce the amount of salt creep that builds up in that line. As well as that, if you're using ozone, it recirculates the ozonated air, and any ozone that does escape, that doesn't get dissolved, back through the Venturi. So you get a double dip at your oxygen as well. Extra air is drawn in from outside the cup through those holes. Okay. If you have a commercial system where you're using a lot of ozone and you need to vent it outside, we can make the lid with a bulkhead that you can plumb outside. And if it needs excess air, it'll draw it in from there. And if there's excess gas coming out, it'll push it out and get rid of it out of the facility. So we can customize like that as well. Okay. That's the first skimmer. This is the smallest one. The smallest one coming in anyway. Now, one of the bigger units we've got coming in, you can see the attachment there that we've got for the air draw. That then hooks up to your skimmer via that barb. All right. These ones have not got this drilled in the middle, so that will get drilled in the middle, plus the ones around the outside, the spiral nozzles, just like I was talking about, but all labeled. Okay. So BTA SKM20 is this model, right? It'll also have that on the outside of the riser tube cup as well with model. All the pumps and controllers are all labeled BTA with all of that, so you know that you know it's all matching up and everything like that. There's no question on model numbers or anything like that. You know, you don't have to guess. It's not unlabeled or anything like that. It's all got model numbers, full DC controllable needle wheel pumps, and because I take into account both air displacement, air mixing, water flow rate through the needle wheel pumps, because it's orders of magnitude higher than a Venturi pump, because the Venturi pump is reduced in flow because of the increasing pressure to operate the Venturi. So the mixing and everything, I take all that into account. So the time of 2 minutes of that dwell time is actually a true 2-minute dwell time, unlike the majority of other skimmers on the market where they just take the water volume of the vessel and divide. So say you needed 100 litres a minute at a 2-minute dwell time. They'll say, all right, there's a 200-litre vessel there. We divide it in two. That means it's doing 100 litres a minute, so it takes 2 minutes to fill. They don't account for water displacement by air. They don't account for mixing. They don't account for any differences in manufacturing or volume that's taken up inside by internal plumbing, fittings, essentially, etc., stuff like that. None of them assess water turnover within the skimmer and the bulk water turnover and mixing and how that affects bombardment and removal rate. And a smattering of other things like air volume and things like that, which is the highest in the industry with the SKM skimmers. So you can get the maximum amount of air more than any other skimmer model on the market that I know of. And less energy use. So yeah, SKM skimmers, new washdown systems, and the design. And the washdown systems, I am very, very happy to say, no more 12-volt or battery-driven systems, and no more having to spend just as much on the washdown system that you do on the goddamn skimmer just to get it automated, okay? 12-volt and battery-operated-driven systems, the solenoids are weak because they need to be switched by a lower level of power. The build quality of them is less because the demand for them is less, so the quality of them is less, so they break more readily. And you've got to either replace the batteries or you've got to run a dedicated 12-volt power supply to it. So there's no advantage to them. The other washdown systems that they've got to do a whole PCB board and stuff that costs like $3,000 for a washdown system, you just want to wash the foam down, for God's sake, right? So, timed solenoid valve, 240 volt, incredibly robust, incredibly hard solenoid valve in resistance, so that it switches really well, really effectively, really quickly, and it's powered by 240 volt. You're never going to have a problem with power, because if you've got a problem with 12 volt power, you've already got a problem with 240 volt power, and if you've got a battery, the battery runs out, and the solenoids are weaker. All right. This allows you to time down to both your on and off cycles to 1 second. 1 second, right? Plumb that in line, fully ozone compatible, switches on and off. There's one on the saltwater line and on the freshwater line, so you can control the washdowns independently depending on how much waste you're removing and then how much waste is collecting and what the nature of that waste is. So if you've got ozone, it'll be more compact with less foam. If you don't have ozone, it'll be a lot more foamier with a lot more surfactants in it, and it won't knock down as fast. So you want to be able to control those washdowns independently, and you also don't want to be wasting salt water washing down foam, and you also don't want to be using fresh water to wash down salt water, because you'll dilute your salt water and change your salinity in your system. That's what these are also getting installed with. Who am I getting to do all these modifications? Hamali Australia. I don't know if people are very much well aware, but Hamali Australia and BTA have entered a distribution agreement. We are now each other's preferred distributors. So if you get a sump from Eric, one of his designs, which I also sell, you can ask him for UVs, protein skimmers, pumps, etc. from my range, and he will be able to install those. You can buy Hamali sumps from me, and I will also be bringing out my own range of sumps from Hamali as well that will only be available through me, both of which can be modified, installed, constructed, and built to custom by Eric at Hamali. Eric at Hamali is the acrylic master. And I can't think of anyone better to be teaming with, and I can't think of anyone else that I trust more to do the best job. So If you were concerned about build quality with the modifications and things like that, and also extra sumps and stuff, Hamali's supporting BTA. Obviously, I import these skimmers because for them to remain competitive. But then all of the modifications that are done over here that wildly differentiate them from any other skimmer, even commercial skimmers, but definitely hobbyist grade skimmers. All the modifications are done by Eric here in Australia. So they come in, they go to Eric. Eric does the modifications for me, and then I bring them and store them at my facility until they're sold. Okay, that's all with washdown systems. It all comes complete. It's not extra. You don't have to buy a solenoid. You don't have to buy a washdown system. You don't have to upgrade to anything. It's all included in the price. Right? Very simple, very easy. Now, was there anything else that I was going to mention? I've mentioned the commercial UVs. I've mentioned the things. I've shown you all the bacteria. No, I believe that is all that we have. Oh, yes, enrichments. Now, as well as the Enrichum or the Enrich UM and the Enrichum D or the Enrich UMD, as well as that, I will be bringing out a straight enrichment that doesn't have hydrosylates in it, or which are essentially just for extra food soaking and things like that. I have a dry and a liquid coral food coming out. So a dry micronized coral food and a liquid coral food. And some other food additives and nutrition boosters and things like that. So I am going right in to nutritional supplements and foods. I can also formulate and provide specific formulations for people. Say you wanted a formulation for your store or your facility, if you were a coral facility, a coral grow out or propagation facility. If you had certain species requirements, like certain species, for instance, tuna. Tuna need extra taurine, I think. I think there's extra taurine. I'm pretty sure. I know pompano need extra taurine because a lot of pompano diets actually say with added taurine. That's what's in Red Bull. That's where Red Bull comes. Taurine, bull, right? Taurine isn't, yeah, it's a very important dietary supplement. But we can do species-specific formulations for both enrichments and feed additives for you to add to your own feeds if you're formulating your own feeds, if you're doing, food trials and stuff, as well as to then coat foods with, as well as live food enrichments. Like the range is about to increase significantly. So if you are a OEM provider that wants to have access to formulated nutritional supplements and foods that are backed by a qualified aquaculture nutritionalist, then please get in contact with me, because this is a new service we will be running as well. On top of that, and I've decided I'm going to do a whole new video on this, is my UV calculation model. It's going to take quite some time. It's already 9:20. The live stream numbers are starting to drop, and I'm getting a little tired, and I'm dying for a cigarette. So we're going to leave that for next time. I might do a video of that and upload it just as a separate, not as a live stream, so you can have a look at it. Very interesting. I've done a lot of work on it. I've spent a lot of time on it. I've spent a lot of time developing it. And I really think not only has it improved the quality of my UVs and the sizing of them, but it will be beneficial for the industry to, cross-check their UVs or be able to put them into other applications where they might not know the dose rate. It also adds another level of knowledge that a lot of people didn't know, I don't think. So I think it's going to be important to share with everyone. So stick by for that. Stand by for that in the next coming days. If I find any time to scratch myself, or if I somehow find out how to produce a clone, that would also be good. Otherwise, thank you so much for everyone for dropping in. We've got some likes. We've got people in there. Thank you so much, Paula, for dropping in as well and giving all of that amazing feedback. That is wonderful. Thank you to everyone for dropping in and interacting. The chat was fantastic. The questions were awesome. Anyone that had off-topic questions, please don't forget to email me. I would love to chat. It doesn't cost you anything to call me and have a chat to me. I'm quite happy to shoot the breeze. I mean, if I need to go and I find myself blabbering and we both need to go, I'll say we need to go. But I'm happy to talk shop to you whenever you need, especially if it's going to help you. Okay. The only way we get further in this industry the only way we get anywhere is by working together. And that's especially apparent in this industry. A wise man, Chris Talbot, once told me that. So, and I say it every now to this day. It's what I operate on, and yeah. Special mention to Chris Talbot as well. As you probably mentioned and heard, he's got a lot of good foods and things like that. If you're looking for general aquarium gear and quality aquarium gear to stock your shop from a supplier that is honestly second to none in service and quality, go to Aquaculture and talk to Chris and Noriko and Gavin. Their staff has increased dramatically. Their office space and their factory space has increased dramatically. Their product offering has increased dramatically. They are now putting better prices on things like Seachem to make it more competitive for everyone, that's available more widely and not, as restrictive. Chris and Noriko and the team are working really hard, and you really could not find a better supplier to support your everyday requirements, stores that is, or if your store doesn't have it and you know that you can get it from Aquapremium, you can tell your store and they can get it. I really can't just really support them and give them enough of a plug. I love Chris and Noriko and Paul Talbot as well, and Eva and all the kids. They're my second family in Sydney. And honestly, I don't think the industry would be where it is today without the Talbots. It's definitely better with them in it. So, that's my little plug for them. Go and give them a visit, say hello, tell them I sent you. We'll catch you next time. If anyone's got any questions, by all means, give me a bell, send me an email. As I said, my objective is to not sell you anything to solve your problems. If I have to sell you something to solve your problem, great, but my objective is to solve your problems and save you money. So, because, if you're successful by saving money and you don't have to spend extra, then that means the more you're going to ring me up for my advice and hopefully buy the things that you need when you need them. And I don't believe in selling you something that you don't need, aren't going to be able to use, or is completely left field for what you require. So, call me too honest, but that's how I operate. Good night, everyone. 2 hours and 51 minutes. This is a long one. Ta-ta.